And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. I'll tell you right now, today is going to be a very exciting episode. As you can see, the person on the screen right now is one of my favorite guests I've had on this channel and is now probably in the top three, I would say, for reoccurring guests. We always have great conversations. He's been on this channel. I've been on his channel. He has awesome takes on the hobby. He has a very in tune knowledge of what's going on in the day to day of Pokemon because of how he streams on whatnot. He's very understanding of what current market sentiments are. So, with that said, Josh, as always, buddy, thank you very much for coming on this channel and doing me the most gracious of favors and donating to me your time.
Well, as always, like I said, I appreciate you having me on. It's always a blast talking Pokemon. Tonight's going to be interesting because I've been so hot and cold on the hobby, so I'm sure people have no idea what to even expect from me. I just pulled up the YouTube comment section too, so we can have some fun there. But I see a lot of good people in the chat, so it's always a good time. You know, never know where these lives are going to go. Last time I popped in one of your lives, I think there were like 69 different PokeTubers, like all the biggest PokeTubers in the whole world on there. So that was kind of interesting. So who knows where this night will go? Maybe, you know, we'll get Leonhardt and we'll get Road Breaking Nate on here. Here they have a podcast too. Well,
At this
not
point, you
Leonhardt,
can't
but
rule it out.
yeah, you never know, right? But how's it going, man? I'm really enjoying your podcast that you've been putting out with Cool Trainer Ryan and Rattle. I feel like you three are such like an interesting bunch and so like different from each other, but at the same time you get along really well. That it makes really good content. So I've been enjoying them a lot.
Yeah, we're very different personalities, so it always is that like cool mixture of, you got Ryan who's just very outspoken, Rattle who's very opinionated, and me who's both very opinionated, but I also try to be the middleman and the moderator, the mediator, and it gets a little spicy once in a while, but it's always fun. Uh, but I titled this video, "Is the old card shop bullish or bearish on Pokemon today?" Because I've been watching some of your streams and it seems like you've been, I don't know, I wouldn't call it flip floppy, but you've definitely been having a lot of internal dialogue and a lot of internal struggles on where you see the trajectory and the future of this hobby going. So where are you right now today? Where's the old card shop with the trajectory of Pokemon?
Okay, so as of today, like right now, as of the 25th of July, 2022, Lost Origin leaks have just broken out. Someone busted out of the dumpster and got all the shredded cards out of the dumpster, however you want to say. It looks very conspicuously like trash the way that they're like, because like I don't know if you've ever tried. I've never tried to do this, but I can imagine trying to put together a shredded paper out of the dumpster. You can't, it's not possible. These cards they somehow put together quite well. Whatever, these guys are the best puzzle makers in the world. I don't do puzzles, but I saw the leaks and I don't, spoiler alert, everyone, earmuffs if you don't want spoilers, because I'm officially excited again for Pokemon, for modern Pokemon, because as of the last two sets and as of the last like 2-3 months in Pokemon, it's been very difficult for me as like a modern Pokemon pack breaker who like has to get excited and kind of stay excited, which it's usually not very difficult to do, but like it's been really hard these last couple of months for a multitude of reasons. So for now, today, I'm feeling quite bullish, but let's just say, let's temper that fact because I'm still feeling some type of way about grading. So like I only feel like there's only one person in this hobby who really hears me right now, and it's Mason. Mason, you speak to me sometimes. I know that sometimes our takes aren't the same, but on grading, I think he and I see a lot of the same things. It still just feels so silly. It feels so silly, you know, optimization, as we call it, every time we like give PSA more. And I know people are going to say that they add a lot to the hobby because it gives you more money. And it's like, what are you saying, old card shop? You make so much money off of graded cards. I've seen you sell cards like that stupid Meiji card that you sold for $2,000. What did you buy that for, like 69 cents from some middle schooler or something? So you're printing. So I get it. I understand that argument. But like, to me, I've been in this hobby for almost, I'm 33 years old. I've been in it since I was like 8 years old. So going on like 25 years now. And I've never wanted or needed to own a graded card or even thought about it. And since until like the last 4 or 5 years, and now it's like that's all anyone talks about, and that's all everyone's so emotional about it, and all like, what's going to happen with the grade of the junk slab, this junk slab, that's just like, oh my gosh, this hobby survived for so long without slabs. Like, what are we talking? What do we care about this for? And maybe I'm jaded because like I am a pack breaker, so like I could get on just fine without slabs. And like most of the people who buy from me probably will never really grade a lot of cards either, just because they're kind of doing it for, they're the type of people who are going to go to the store and buy a couple packs, open it up, throw it in their binder, throw it in their closet after a few months when they forget about Pokemon, they move on for a while, and they'll come back to the hobby when a new set comes out that they feel like is enjoyable, or when their kids get a little older and they get engagement again. So like it's a cyclical thing, right? But it is I do feel very much so bullish right now on modern Pokemon, but I feel some type of way about grading, and everyone knows that about me. Like I'm very outspoken about it. So like it is what it is, you know. I make money off of it. I think it's ridiculous. I think I heard Dan talking about it in one of his lives recently with Jake, how like he makes a ton of money off of it, but he also thinks it's ridiculous. And like I agree with that take. But you know, it is what it is right now.
I think there's multiple like levels to grading, you know. I think there is a point in the hobby you get to where the hobby starts to become a little boring because you'll eventually start completing all your collection goals relatively easy when it comes to just the raw cards. You got to think about it. Like imagine you don't care about 9s, 10s, you just like, this is almost for like when I talk about the niches of the niches, to say you just like the card. I mean, you can go buy a light play copy for a fraction of a decimal of what a PSA 10 for some cards sell for. So you'll quickly complete your collection goals. Yes, if you want to go on the highest end, the Illustrator Pikachus and stuff, like even the most damaged copy out there is still going to cost a lot of money. But for 99.99% of the cards in this hobby, you can complete that collection goal relatively cheaply, right? But I think when people get and they start to hit that collection goal, I think there's just this normal like path or trajectory people go to where they start to really care more about condition and stuff like that. And then they start creating collection goals condition wise. And then they start going down that rabbit hole and they start to grade cards themselves and they want to get the 10 themselves. It's one thing to buy the 10. It's another thing to be the guy that took a population of a, you know, pop 2 and made it a pop 3. Like, it feels good. It is in a weird way, like a dopamine rush. So I think it's just a natural progression. A lot of people are going to go in this hobby. That's where I stand on grading. But I think it was
like the progression that it's gone, you know, as the hobby is aged and progressed. And I think I'm a little jaded because in this hobby, I say I've been around for 25 years, but I've been in Pokemon. I started in Pokemon and I migrated out of Pokemon after about 5 or 6 years of being in the hobby. And I went to Magic the Gathering and other trading cards. And, you know, I kind of watched Pokemon, but I always felt like I went away from Pokemon for a long time. And then I came back to it recently. And then when I came back to it, grading was a thing, but it still wasn't the biggest thing. Like, yeah,
Sure.
there was like some big graded sales that were, you know, in Modern, like the Charizard from Hidden Fates that sold for the Black Label, some huge number. And that put Modern on the map. And the Burning Shadows Charizard, the first Rainbow Rare Chase Charizard in a long time, was actually get hard to pull. People loved that. And that was a big thing, but like, it wasn't like the only thing. And now I feel like I'm sort of a black sheep for being like the anti-grading kind of guy, whatever, just because that's the only thing people talk about now for Pokemon. And it's not that I'm saying that people who collect graded is bad, because I am a hypocrite. I'm over here talking about how grading is bad, but I collect the worst of the worst. You guys all know. I collect PSA 1s, okay?
Oh, look at that.
So
Celebi Gold Star, Shining Charizard.
First edition, Shining Charizard.
Yeah.
Every
Another
single one
Gold
of
Star
these,
Charizard
PSA 1.
PR1, yep.
So like I cannot talk. I am
that
a
one's Stormfront.
dirty
Shadowless.
collector boy. Okay.
Shiny
So
Tyranitar, yeah.
you may think I'm a flipper. You may think I'm an evil scalper. You're right. You're right about that. Though I haven't been called a scalper in far too long. That's also how I know the market's dying. So the fact that I haven't been called a scalper in a long time, that's a problem for me. I used to bother me. Now it bothers me not being called that, because it's like, ooh, I got to work harder now. But that's a whole nother story. But yes, I am a dirty PSA 1 collector. So I'm a little bit of hypocritical. Like, why would anyone? So I have a different stance on PSA 1s though. So here's my take, guys. I'm gonna show them for just a moment because I have most of what I want. You guys want PSA 1s, that's fine. But yeah, I've got most of my collection. There's like 5 or maybe 10 cards I still want. But the thing about PSA 10s is I get it. Like, condition's hard to get, like good condition, everything. But as like a pure collector, as someone who just wants like a cool old card that's like weird for the art, like a crystal Charizard or a shining gold star, whatever, and I want it cheaply, I can pick up a damaged copy and grade it. And if it gets a 1, like, it's encapsulated in the slab and it still looks kind of fun from afar. It's a Mimi card. I have the card. It's in my collection. I don't have to feel bad about spending a ton of money on it. I can still enjoy it. And here's the best part. If I ever learn how to talk to my cardboard, I can take that card and sit it down at the dinner table. And I guarantee you that when that card sits down and tells me its life story, it had a long, full, and very rich, flavorful life that it can tell me. Whereas that PSA 10, you know what's going to tell me? It's the spoiled rich kid who grew up with the silver spoon, who, like, you know, it got paid for it was paid for its whole college with, you know, it didn't even have to go to college. It had everything handed to it. And it's a boring, you know, spoiled little rich PSA 10 kid who's gonna say, I'm just PSA 10. I went from a pack to sleeve. Like, it didn't see any play. It never went to
so
the playground.
PR1 is
got
the one
traded.
you could crush a beer with? Is that what happened?
Yes, you could do anything. Like, that PSA 1 could have like had been a superhero for before you do. That Charizard, for all you know, before you got to it, could have went and won a tournament. It could have been the Charizard that, you know, Dan sold that first place trophy, or that like trophy Pikachu. That Charizard could have been in that deck and played with. But you know what? That PSA 10 that you have, I guarantee you no one ever used it. Anyway, that's my show for PSA 1s. I feel like they tell a better story at the end of the day. I've been trying to learn how to talk to cards. It hasn't happened yet, but sooner rather than later, we're going to have some good dinner time talks.
Oh, definitely. And I just watched the most recent podcast with Squeaks and Radar. I think it's Collectible Conversations. If you guys aren't subscribed to those guys, go check that out. But Radar said a great quote. He said, what was the exact words he said? Buy the card, sell the grade. And I think that is very true. And anybody out there who would tell you different is a liar. But just because he says that, and it's funny because it's the truth, it doesn't change the fact that that's the market too. Like, one of the things we talk about on this hobby is being able to like grow your collection. And if you do care about growing it, like, one of the only ways I could really help people is to grow your collection. Sometimes you have no option but to start to sell some stuff and sell the stuff you don't want, free up some money to buy the stuff you do want, unless you're just, you know, a millionaire and then money is no option where you don't need to make any money, then just do it however you want. But if you do need to sell cards to grow your collection, if you really, really want to optimize the dollar amount you're going to get, and assuming your cards are in, you know, gem mint condition, and you can potentially get that 9 or that 10, that's really where you're going to see the most exponential price increases, depending on the card, right? But even on the lowest of ends, assuming that it's a modern promo or something that is super mass produced, I've talked about on this channel so many times, almost to the point where people's ears want to bleed. The fact that the Champions Path Charizard V promo is still selling for like $35 defies every single logic in the world, but it doesn't change the fact that that card in a PSA 10 is worth $35. And anybody who tells you different is lying. So
we're still in a mania. That's one of the signs.
Yeah,
that's still one of the
that's
signs.
a sign.
Yeah.
But and then that's the part too, where is identifying like what's the market. And this is where we talk about market conditions and stuff, like identifying the market. When the market is trying to be insanely irrational, and if you have a rational brain and you can see the irrational areas of the hobby, but you could still capitalize on other people's irrationality, like, that is a very good strategy in this hobby, where everybody could sit around. We could have 100 people on this and we can say, you know what? I don't think the price of this card is justified in a 10, but I'm going to sell it and make this much money. And everybody's like, yeah, that's a good play, you know?
The funny thing about that right now is I do think that right now there are a lot of those opportunities, even this market, that I feel like I should really start looking at again. That I sort of in you know how when it was really bull market in the last 2 years, everything was going so fast. It was kind of some things was left on the wayside. You're like, oh, I know I could make this play. Like I could buy up all the birthday Pikachus that were, I don't know. There was a point where birthday Pikachus from celebrations were like $3 or something. And
Yeah,
I feel like if
I'm sure that's what they're at now.
they might
$3.
be, and to be 100% honest, I feel like I should start buying up certain cards at certain prices that I feel like are certainly iconic. And speaking to the irrationality of grading, starting like to get back to doing what I would have done back like when I first got back into the hobby, when I was just grinding, because like things got kind of so out of control with like the hype and things selling. It's like you start losing those types of things, or at least I know I did. I started moving on to other things. So like I've definitely in the past couple of months been going back to some of those things, those like more grindy type like plays, those more moves you could make, you could call them. Whereas back in the old, 2021, 2020, there weren't any plays. The only play was buying everything. There was not a play. The play was buy as much as you could, as quick as you could, and sell it and do it again. That was not a play. That was not a
Yeah.
secret. It was like, whereas now you actually could like, you could strike out. Like if you make a
Oh,
play,
sure.
like you could definitely strike out. And I do think that there are a lot of things right now in the market that maybe could be considered good buys, that would be considered good buys, but couldn't do anything. But yeah, I feel like right now I'm excited for the hobby. I will say that there are some things that I would like to see a little more from like the Pokemon company. Like, I don't know, like why are they putting out another 12.5 set? That's kind of interesting. It's either going to be the worst set of the block or it's going to be the best, because it's going to have all the extra stuff that was
Yeah.
like not included, that was like nobody really asked for, that needed a home, or it's going to have some new stuff that they haven't spoiled at all, that we're just going to be really blown out of the
Well,
water.
they
So
kind of did that with Cosmic Eclipse in a sense, though. Yes,
right, they
it
just threw
it
everything in
had the
it.
character rare subset, but that's not really what I'm talking about. Like all the chase cards that were in that was kind of just like everything that was more or less left over, and they're like, all right, let's just give it to them. So, but you did talk about Lost Origins earlier in this video, and that's something I kind of want to go back and talk about because I agree with you. I think Lost Origins is going to be insanely good. And it's weird because it's starting to really start to cement a certain segment of Sword and Shield, like to really be a amazing time. Because when you start to look at the beginning of Sword and Shield is super lackluster. You got, Sword and Shield base, Rebel Clash, Darkness Ablaze, Champions Path, like
They
oh
reintroduced gold cards in the beginning. That was supposed to be
yeah,
the big thing because
yeah,
they
with
took
the
them
Zacian
away.
and the Zamazenta, but it was weak, but then you start like slowly, gradually getting good, and then Vivid Voltage, and then Battle Styles. While I would be very curious in the history of Pokemon where Battle Styles kind of falls, because I don't think it's going to be like the way people look at a Crimson Invasion or something, because they introduced all arts, and it's still got the Sleepy Tea. And to me personally, out of all the alternative arts that we've seen in all of Pokemon, I keep going back to that Sleepy Tea because it was kind of like the first in my book. And sure, you can go back. There was definitely like alternative arts in Sun and Moon and stuff, or quote unquote alternative arts, but they weren't true alternative arts like we are talking about the Sleepy Tea. Yeah. Yeah. You got the Mewtwo right there from Shining Fates, or not Shining Fates, Shining Legends. Like obviously that's a super iconic card. But as you started moving in, and then you got Chillin' Rain just had tons of character rares, but then you got Evolving Skies, which Evolving Skies is not going to just wind up as one of the best sets of Sword and Shield. In the history of Pokemon, you're going to be able to stack that up against a lot of sets with like how much fun it is to open and the cards you can potentially get. Yeah, the supply is always going to be super watered down because of the time period it came out. But when you start to look at it and just compare it, not based on price, but based off of like cards inside of it, Evolving Skies is going to be this top tier set in the history of Pokemon. Again, prices excluded. When people are going to be like, oh, a $20,000 booster box versus this 150. No, that's not what I mean. But then Brilliant Stars had Charizards, reintroduced character rares, which is amazing. And
Can I
now
say
Lost
something about
Origins.
Evolving Skies though? Have you opened a lot of Evolving Skies yourself?
I opened, what's a lot? Like I probably opened two booster
Booster box or
boxes
two?
worth. Yeah.
It's brutal. Did you like it? Did you enjoy the experience?
I did enjoy it, but I enjoyed Brilliant Stars 10 times more because I still don't like the feeling of getting green code cards, and Evolving Skies still have that green code card feel to it, where
Can I
Brilliant
tell you
Stars
something?
at
It took
least
me
didn't.
5 booster cases, this reprint, and I still haven't hit a single VMAX. I will say that Evolving Skies, while it is, in my opinion, the best Sword and Shield set, it's almost one of the worst sets to open up. It feels so bad. Like, it just feels bad, man.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Evolving. Like, people pay for it. They pay more for Evolving Skies on my channel because it's worth more. It's like a $150 booster box. So, like, the price per pack is a little more. And it feels bad for me when they buy it because I have to open it and then I end up giving a lot of free stuff away, like to those people who open it on. Like, I have a stack of like ultra rares and VMAXs and like a couple like golds and secret rares thrown in that I'll randomly grab out of when someone doesn't pull anything out of like 5 packs, just because it feels bad for me to send something through the mail that's like just bulk. And it feels bad on the stream when you pull 5 packs and don't get anything. So like,
So, hold on,
opening
what were
Evolving
you?
Skies is rough,
I
man.
still can't believe you didn't get VMAXs though. That sounds like crazy.
So no VMAX alternate arts.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I
alt
misspoke.
alt
VMAX
arts. I
alt
got
arts. So
yeah,
we
that
pulled plenty
makes
of
sense.
Vs, but not any VMAX alt arts. So like, of course, the Moonbryon is like the only reason you can justify opening up an Evolving Skies booster box right now at the price is if you can get a VMAX alternate art, because those things
What's
are
the
great.
pull rate for that?
What was that?
What's the pull rate for that, give or take? Is like 1 out of every
Over 1 in
700.
1,000 packs.
Oh, 1
I
out
can
of
tell you
1,000.
right now, I'm at about 1,000 packs or so, and it still hasn't been pulled. We pulled 2 on our channel, so they do exist. But the thing is, people are going to hear that and they're going to extrapolate, just like I did with Vivid Voltage back when it first came out. I opened 3 booster cases, pulled a bunch of amazing rares, everything but Celebi, and then bought out every Celebi I saw because I thought it was going to be harder to pull because of a small sample size. You cannot go off of small sample sizes like that. So like, that's me anecdotally trying to tell the chat, like, I'm just saying, my point of that isn't that I think that the pull rates are bad. It's that Evolving Size feels bad to open. So I think that's going to hurt it in the long run. Whereas like something like you said, Brilliant Stars feels good. And it feels really great. Feels great to open. And even something like Astral Radiance, like someone opened a half a booster box of Astral Radiance on my channel last night. And I hadn't had anyone ask for Astro in a long time. And like, it was really fun to open. Like, they got a lot of hits. Like, I was counting the hits. They got like 9 hits, I think, out of 18 booster packs. And it was like, that was good. That was pretty good. It was like a large stack for what it felt like. So, I mean, I love Evolving Skies for the artwork, but it just feels bad to open. That's all. That's my only point.
Yeah, so I won't go as far as saying it feels bad to open. I just enjoyed Brilliant Stars better. Like, this is the crazy thing. So when I say Evolving Skies for me wasn't as fun to open, we're still talking about like the 2 best sets of modern, you know? It's not like we're talking opening up a Brilliant Star as opposed to open up a Rebel Clash, you know? Like, it's still talking Evolving Skies versus Brilliant Stars, but Lost Origins now, I have a feeling, is going to have like another set that people are going to talk about for years to come, because you already have that full art, you know, Pikachu VMAX with red and the VMAX Pikachu. And you think about, you know, VMAX Pikachu's already, like, why do people love Vivid Voltage? One, at the beginning, people really love Vivid Voltage because of what you talked about, those amazing rares, but because of that Chunkachu. But now you have a character rare of that Chunkachu with, in my opinion, better artwork. Like, in Vivid Voltage, my favorite card wasn't the Chunkachu. It was the alternative art, you know, the pink background Pikachu. Like, that was actually my favorite card in the set because I like just the color scheme, and I thought it was a little bit different with that full art Pikachu, and it wasn't easy to pull, but it was relatively cheap for what it was. And I was like, oh, this is like a nice pickup. But
I still like the amazing rares.
Yeah. But I think when people look at Lost Origins and in the future, like, there's the end of Sword and Shield is starting to become very reminiscent of the end of like the Sun and Moon block, because even the underrated sets at the end of Sun and Moon, so I guess like the middle-ish timeline, like Lost Thunder.
You're right, the
Lost
Lugia
Thunder,
set, which was great. Like that's a good set, but
super
it's
underrated too.
nothing
Like
compared to the tag team sets though. Like
yeah,
no one even cares about that Sun and Moon era. They're like tag team or bust.
yeah, and Lost like that. Yeah, so Lost Thunder is one of the most underrated sets of modern. And again, for me, you know, I still talk about Sun and Moon like modern. People are starting to almost like talk about Sun and Moon as if it's vintage when you look at prices of like team up booster boxes and stuff. It gets a little crazy, but you know, when you go at that end, you have that Lost Origins and the Unified Minds and the team ups and the Cosmic Eclipse and stuff. Like when you start to look at that end block there, you're like, even Unbroken Bonds was still a decent set. You know, it still had the Charizard in it and stuff.
I
Like
loved Unbroken Bonds. I mean, I loved all
yeah,
all those 4 sets. They were all good. Yeah.
you look at that end of Sun and Moon and it's like, maybe yeah, that's a pretty beefy like timeline there. But then you go to the very beginning of Sun and Moon and you look at Sun and Moon base and it's like, eh,
Yeah, it's a little deflating. Yeah.
yeah, or you know, then you start talking about like, oh well, I guess Crimson Invasion is still technically part of Sun and Moon, huh? Isn't it? And it's like, well, where does Crimson Invasion fall in the Sun and Moon? And then we'll have the same conversation, but with Sword and Shield and stuff. And who knows? Like we're talking now when you talk about Sun and Moon and you go back to 2016, well, I guess end of 2016 to 2019, right?
Sun
Like
and Moon was when I got back into the hobby at the end of Sun and Moon, so right in those tag team sets. And so like I will always for me, Sun and Moon will be that nostalgia for like I hear a lot of people who got back in around XY. They're like they think the XY, like I hear
Phantom
I think
Forces
Radar and
yeah.
Alex, Nostalgianomics. I think a lot of people got, I think Jake too from Pokenomics, he also got an XY. Everyone I've talked to.
And they all get in on Phantom Forces for some reason. I have no clue how that, you know, like worked.
That was a cool set. Phantom Forces
yeah.
was that one, and I think the Breakpoint and Breakthrough.
Breakpoint and Breakthrough, yeah, fun
Those
sets.
sets were fun, like with the gold alternate arts. I still remember getting those in 10s when I was in Sun and Moon era, getting like old XY packs. I feel like the break sets I liked more. But I will always remember Sun and Moon fondly because it was like that re-entry point for me. And so I think a lot of people who got in Sword and Shield will, because a lot of people did get back in during Sword and Shield era, I think they will remember that era as like their re-entry point, and they'll shoot.
You know, but even like XY base, when you go to the very beginning of XY, like they had the full art cards, but you know, they started reintroducing like the characters that people cared about, like the full art Venusaurs in XY base, you know, like cards like that are still relatively slept on cards. So even those very early, what do you got there? I can't see what
I just bought a lot out of a binder of EX era full arts, and I don't like them. I've been constantly on record clowning on EX era full art because it's all like 5-band graphics and stuff. But you know, having them in hand, they're a lot nicer. They're a lot nicer than I give them credit for. So there's some EX stuff. There's beautiful EX cards out there.
Yeah.
So anyone I've offended in the past about EX when I've talked about the artwork, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, but I agree though. I think that the last part of Sword and Shield is going to be reminiscent of that last part of Tag Team, and I think it's going to be remembered much. It's going to be a heavier hitting era. Even battle styles, like you were saying, like you think hot take, not a hot take. Everyone has this take on battle styles. Everyone thinks it's underrated, but nobody thinks it's underrated enough that it's worth putting any money into, and nobody's confident enough to hold it because there's all these other better sets around the same price. Because here's the question you have to make yourself when you're thinking about buying a case of battle styles. I can either buy a case of battle styles or I can buy basically a case of Fusion Strike. If you had a choice between battle styles and Fusion Strike, obviously you're going to choose Fusion Strike like every time. So until that price disparity is enough, but then here's the thing, like, why is Rebel Clash worth more than most of these other Sword and Shield sets that have better cards that people actually want to open? It's a simple fact that nobody wanted it, nobody was holding it,
It's
and
supply
now people
versus demand.
It's supply, yeah, and there wasn't a lot of it at the time. They haven't done a reprint. Imagine what they if they reprint it right now, it would just destroy the market, but they're not going to. Yeah, but that's
$80
not,
booster box,
really,
$75 booster box. Like Rebel Clash would get hit so freaking hard if they
like the Darkness Ablaze ETBs. It was not a matter of what was in the ETBs, that the value wasn't in the ETBs. It was just the fact that there wasn't enough to go around, and so it was an irrational price point. So like the same thing might happen with battle styles, in that everyone's putting their money in all these other sword and shield era sets with alternate arts, but when you're going back and you're trying to complete the alternate art, like the whole binder for alternate arts, you have to go through battle styles. Just like I was thinking about the Pokemon Go set, like I may not like the Pokemon Go set, but the person in 10 years who's going back and trying to get every alternate art and maybe pulling it all, or even just like trying to get them all, you have to get that alternate art Mewtwo, because you can't have the whole alternate art set without the alternate art Mewtwo, because it's Mewtwo. You can't miss that one. So you do have to go to Pokemon Go. So, you know, it's like, I may not like certain things about certain sets, but I also have to take a step back and realize that I'm not the overall, I'm not everyone. I'm just a small segment of the population. And I sell to a large segment of the population of very many different collectors. And I see this in my, you know, I just had in the last 2-3 weeks, I had like 3 or 4 people come in who are like regular customers or followers who just got back into the hobby. And the reason they got back into it is because during COVID, they saw how crazy it was, and they saw how expensive it was too. And they're priced out and they couldn't get anything at the store, and they weren't going to go the extra mile and go on Facebook and look for it then or whatever. But now, since it's more accessible, they've re-entered the hobby. They're like, hey, this is kind of fun. And they don't see the big deal. They're like, I don't see what the big deal is, why people are like saying Pokemon's dead. They're like, I'm just getting into it and I'm loving it. I'm having a blast. So like, it is refreshing to see that still. And it does give me hope. And you know, it makes me, it makes me thankful to be in a thing like Pokemon, where it has such a strong IP, because there are other TCGs out there that I don't think have the strongest IP to lean on, that maybe will have a little more trouble in a bearish market, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, when you look back on sets and time, so this is one of the things I've said on this channel before, is the only person in the history of Pokemon who is undefeated and will continue to stay undefeated is Father Time, right? Father Time dictates everything in this hobby. An example being, if Emergent Powers booster boxes can crack 4 figures, you know, and people pay for that, like when you have an expected value in that booster box of, and I'll be generous, $70, you know?
I was gonna say $20, but
yeah, I was being super generous, like assuming you grade those cards. I mean, or $50, like you take something like, but that is another example of supply and demand. If Pokemon for whatever reason, like decide to pull the, you know, ace out their sleeve and says, you know what, we're just going to reprint Emergent Powers for 0 reason whatsoever, because that would make no sense. Again, it would just like evaporate that market too. So
do you know Magic the Gathering at all, PK? Do you ever follow the Magic the Gathering market?
I don't know enough to like talk about Magic the Gathering with any sort of like conviction.
Have you heard about this new set coming out that's called Dominaria? This directly pertains to it. So Dominaria Return or whatever.
So where they reprint, or they didn't reprint, but they're like putting some chase cards into the set.
Okay, so they did this before in a set called Zendikar. What they did in Zendikar back in like, it was like 10, 15 years ago, or whatever. It was a long time ago. They put in something called a priceless treasures spot in the booster boxes. So one in a case, I think they would insert one, like I think it was a revised or maybe an unlimited. And it was one of these older, like real old school sets. They would put the old like mint condition pack fresh cards into those boxes as a surprise. So you could pull like a Mox Lotus or a Mox Diamond or a Black Lotus or like any of these crazy power cards in a booster pack from Modern at the time. And so they did that and they didn't tell anyone. And it was like a big thing when it was discovered. People were hunting it. They only did it on the first print run of those booster boxes. So it makes now Zendikar booster boxes, if you bought them in Magic the Gathering, thousands of dollars, but you have no way of telling if it's a first print. And then on initial reprints of those sets, they didn't put those priceless treasures in the set. So the new set that's coming out is doing that. They're using Legends, which is an old school Magic the Gathering. And some people think that those cards they reprinted or something, and they
what year was Legends?
Gosh, was it like 94, 90? it's like it was a couple years after Magic. It was one of the first expansions of Magic the Gathering. It was like in the early 90s. I don't know the exact year, but it's like you can't reprint something like that. You can't make it look the same. The printing, the presses aren't the same. Like I saw Rudy talking about it. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. So like the question is like they had literally 40 booster, like a pallet of legends just sitting there. So like, does that mean you think that maybe there's that in Pokemon? You think there's a potential that Pokemon has like pallets of base set first edition that they're just waiting to? No, you don't think they? But why wouldn't Wizards of the Coast and Magic do that? You think they went and? So I mean, without knowing,
because of the word you just said which was the key. So real quick, I'm looking. It looks like 94 was Legends came out.
Yeah, so it's early 90s. That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
So I think the answer was within the question itself. You said, why would Magic the Gathering do that? Well, Magic the Gathering created Magic, or sorry, Wizard of the Coast created Magic. They continued to make Magic for all this time. So it would make sense for Wizard of the Coast to have old product potentially, or
I get what you're saying, because Pokemon has been handed over.
You have a big change. You have from Skyridge to Ruby Sapphire. You're talking legal battles. You're talking Nintendo poached Wizard of the Coast employees.
What about post that? What about post that? Do you think there's a possibility that Nintendo, like after the
could
Nintendo
put out like a Ruby Sapphire chase cards, like so we start to see EX cards or something? Like I think
it's a crazy
thing,
I
think you pulled out like the fire red leaf green Charizard right earlier. You showed that. Like
that was I had a fire red leaf green.
Can we see a fire red leaf green Charizard as a chase card potentially? Sure. I think that's actually would be fun. Now, chances of that probably low, but I think that would actually be really good for whatever set they did decide to reprint, or maybe not reprint's a bad word, but re-release, because you would be amazed. Like we talk about a certain area of this hobby, like an area where a lot of people enjoy, like me particularly, like I like that late Wizard of the Coast, like, Expedition, Aquapolis, Skyridge, but going into the Nintendo e-readers. And then once you get out of like early Nintendo and you get out of like, hidden legends and stuff like that, and you start to go into like Team Rocket Returns, and they introduce gold stars, but they also introduce like heavy hitters throughout the set. Like, let's just say, sure, Team Rocket Returns. Let's just say they have a couple cases somehow of EX Team Rocket Returns, and then you can start to pull, Rocket's Moltres and Rocket Snorlax, and you get super lucky. You can pull the Treecko or the Mudkip or the Torchic, right? And so now you got a chance for gold stars and modern day packs, and these things are original. Dude, the market would lose its freaking mind. But we forget how many people, like I say EX Team Rocket Returns, you and the 75 people watching this video, very, very in the know of what that set is. They know it came out in 2004. They know exactly where it landed. They know why it's historic. They know why it was a great set. They understand how hard or how rare and scarce it is. We're in the 1%, and we're in a fraction of that 1%. The majority of this hobby has no freaking clue what EX Team Rocket Returns is. And if they did start to really learn about it, because they would be like, why is everybody so excited about this? And they start to go down the rabbit hole, that'd be amazing for them.
They'd love it. They'd love it. But yeah, I don't think it's going to happen though. I actually agree with Rattle. It was probably left over. Because at that time, there's a time in Magic the Gathering's history in the 90s where it wasn't popular. Like there was a time where it boomed, but there was also a time where it was considered evil and you weren't supposed to play it, and they overprinted it. Like my distributor, who I buy Pokemon from, used to sell Magic the Gathering way back in the day. He's an old school distributor. He won't touch Magic anymore because he got burned on Fallen Empires after they really boomed in the late, I think it's like the late 90s, and they printed 1 million Fallen Empires boosters because it was like they needed the demand, like that people wanted it. And so apparently they printed too much and it crashed the market. And my distributor, when I told him that I had a Fallen Empires booster box that I bought for like $600 or something, he was like, I used to use those for door stops, right? I was like, I know, man. Time has a funny way of like doing things, and Magic is a weird thing, and so yeah, it was it was a weird interaction. But I asked him, it was because I brought that up. I was like, hey, are you ever gonna do Magic again? Because I would love to buy some Magic from you eventually if I ever could. Like, he's like, oh no, I'm not touching that ever again. Like, that's all. Pokemon's big enough for me. That's good. He does action figures and he does Pokemon. Those are his two things, and that's like his. But it's interesting to hear it because like I personally, I think that TCGs in general are really cool. Like, as you guys all heard me talk, like, I just like, I'm a fanboy of like the whole like comic book shop culture. Like, I grew up in a comic book shop, basically. Like, I made all my friends there. You know, whenever I'd move, my parents moved around a little bit growing up. So like, whenever I'd move to a new place, I would like, you know, I would bring my binder and I'd go to the table where I'd saw all the kids with their cards, and that would be my entry point to going to talk to them. So like, I have a very personal relationship with TCGs. So I guess it's interesting to see like all the mainstream like appeal of it now, because it's like it's come and gone so many times. I guess sometimes when I get a little bit bearish, it's me thinking like, could we head into another one of those times where like I feel like I'm the only one in the room who likes TCGs again? Because right now it doesn't feel like that. I feel like I'm in the room with like, you know, 80 other people who love this stuff, and that would be awesome. I've never been in an LGS with like 80 other people who love the stuff. I've been, most of the time it's like 6 or 7 people who are there who are like regulars, and a couple people coming in, you know, and you get to know them. So
Yeah, and like you talk about like that social aspect of Pokemon, we're in this new time of Pokemon 2, which is the social interaction of Pokemon, you know, like sure, you had your E4s back in the day and stuff, and you could still communicate on chat boards and stuff like that, but we're changing the Zoom culture and meetups, and we're also getting into a point of Pokemon 2 where I've talked about this on my channel before. There is a lot of people who were closet collectors, meaning they didn't let their collections be known. They didn't let like their enthusiasm for Pokemon to be known because they were in that weird age gap. We've all like eventually got to that age now where we don't care what other people have to say, you know? But again, I say that now today in July of 2022, but pre-COVID, like COVID is what got me out of my shell, and being locked at home, like this channel came out of the quarantine because I was bored, you know? Like probably this channel would never exist if we never went and locked down. I would just still be a closet collector in a way, and if I wasn't, I would definitely not be, you know, like, not to say I'm well known, but like there would be no one who would know me, just like there was nobody who knew me before. But it was just getting out of that shell. But we're going into this timeline too, where now you got YouTube channels and Discords, and you got the Twitters, and you got your Reddits,
Discords,
and
yeah, and like all the
yeah,
groups
Discords and
and
Instagrams, and
Facebooks.
even
Yeah.
on your whatnot. I'm sure there's
Oh
like
yeah.
people making friends on. You have so many different things now,
Regulars. Yeah. Yeah.
and for the most part, these groups actually work in isolation of each other. You would be surprised that the Twitter group doesn't really talk to the Instagram group, and the Instagram group doesn't really talk to the YouTube group as much as you might think. Like, of course, there's definitely bleed over to all this stuff. But for
My,
the
yeah, to
most
put that
part,
in context, my whatnot community is 100% different than my YouTube community that I have. Like, completely different. Like the people I hang out with on whatnot are almost none of them are subscribed to me on YouTube. Like, I have 9,000, close to 9,000 followers on whatnot now. I only have like 1,000 on my YouTube, and they're completely different. Like, there are some carryovers and everything, but because they're just really engaged in the hobby and stuff, but very different aspects, like you said. And like TikTok, like the TikTok era of Pokemon is an era of Pokemon I know nothing about. I really need to get involved with it because the packs on TikTok go for like ridiculous prices. Like, I don't know what I'm doing trying to sell packs on whatnot, like some old boomer. I need to be on TikTok apparently. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. You're right. I don't think all these interactions between the communities always intersect. And I guess what I said earlier, I need to go back a little bit. I do feel like nowadays I'm much more connected with the community. And I feel like I have so many more friends within Pokemon than I ever did before, even growing up, being in it for the 25 or so years that I've been in it. You know, even being in it that long, I feel like I've never been so connected. And it's crazy because it was during the lockdown, like you said, you know, and all these, and now I want to shout out the new culture that is like the Pokemon podcast. That, by the way, Squeaks and Radar, if you guys are in here, I love you guys. I'm so glad you're back to doing your podcast. And you guys were a huge inspiration for, I know, for PK, but also for myself, who I have a Pokemon podcast. Shout out Cardboard Hands with the Flex Gods and Retrospecs. They're in the chat. I saw them. But everyone's been starting up these really cool, like long form kind of podcast Pokemon content that I really do think that like Squeaks and Radar pioneered. So I'm glad to see them back. And it's been a wealth of like not a wealth, but like a resurgence of content, because now it's not just that open mouth YouTube content that, you know, I used to feel like that's all there was. Like when I got back into watching YouTube again and into the hobby, it was all Leonhardt and, you know, Real Breaking Nate and Unlisted Leaf, which was cool. Like it's like I pulled it and it's like it was nothing, no nuance, no takes. There weren't guys sitting here talking for hours about like, you know, the nuance that is the hobby. And that's what I craved with when I did. Well, I guess at that time, maybe I didn't crave it, but I did without realizing, because that's certainly what I crave now. And that's what I'm sure that 60, 70, 80 people who are here now are craving too. So I think that there's a nice evolution and maturation that we've seen during the hobby. We've seen it really evolve just in such a short time that I guess today, that just goes back to, I'm starting to feel a lot more positive about it. But man, the market's got to recover soon.
Is the market really that bad though?
I'm talking macro economy wise. I guess crypto is recovering a little better, but I would love to see, you know, a recession not be so long as like the last one that we had. Because like between 2000, the Pokemon recession, I guess we'll talk about, it's 2016 to 2020, like 2017 to 2020, we'll call it. That was a 3-year long kind of little lull. That was a long time to be down, right? I would like a little bit more of a cyclical, like a quicker cycle, I guess, is what I'm hoping for. But who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if you had the answer to that, that's the question every single economist and every single person in the world would like to know. But we don't know, you know. But when you talk about the health of Pokemon, though, right now, when you look at prices for stuff, in the history of Pokemon, we're still talking relatively high, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
Booster box prices, still high demand. Like Astro Radiance, like what are booster box prices on eBay right now? $100?
110 probably shipped after.
110? Like that's still that's a healthy market when you have a box still selling for 110 with everything that's going on right now. Like,
and I can't buy more Astral Radiance booster boxes from my distributor either. So that's just what's out there, by the way. So I don't know if the other people can do that, but I know that for a fact, most booster boxes are pretty much, I think I could buy like a couple, like there's Battle Styles and Chilling Rain that was like left over that can be bought, but I don't think there's a lot left. So it's just kind of what's on the market as far as what I can get.
which, okay, then this brings us to that super weird part too, where it's like, Pokemon said they printed 9 billion cards. Like, take it for what you want. Like, doesn't mean that's a lot. Doesn't mean that's a little. Sure.
I can say ridiculous big numbers too. And
there's already been enough videos which kind of like talked about like how hard it is to really pull the true cards versus, you know, all that. There's enough people talk about that. But the question is, if Pokemon was really ramping up their printers to whatever burr mode it is, you know, just turn it to burr, and they did that, why the hell at distributor levels are you still not able to pick up as many booster boxes of Brilliant Stars or Evolving Skies as you want? Like, what were they printing?
Same question. Like, what are they doing? I think they're printing a lot of everything. That's the thing. Like, you have to think collection boxes. Like, look behind me. Look at the plethora of product that I have behind me. I have Arceus boxes. I have ETBs, Darkness Ablaze, Shining Fates. I have these EV boxes won't count because that's old. The EV boxes aren't anything I picked up. This is all stuff I've recently picked up though, besides the EV boxes. Yeah. A couple of Vivid Voltage booster boxes that he had that were loose, not from a case, but just like booster boxes. I was like, sure, I'll take some Vivid Voltage. Why not? I hate the set, but I'll take a couple more. I got a million of these Juniper boxes here. These Juniper cases, people don't want these for some reason. These things are fantastic, but Pokemon's printing a lot of product, and it's a lot of variety.
Yeah. So why do you think that is too? Do you think that is to just sell product to those people just buying the one-offs, you know, for the people walking into your Walmart and Targets? Because the things we talk about, we're talking like booster boxes. Again, the majority of this hobby don't buy booster boxes. Like that's just the truth. Like I couldn't give you percentages, but like we have Mason in the chat, like he could give you probably like a decent idea of how many people spend $100 on each set, you know? I would say that that is probably relatively low in the macroness of Pokemon. Probably very few people spend $100 per set. So I would say maybe they have to make those $20, $30 products because that's what most of the hobby buys, you know? They buy that V box.
I'm a casual Magic the Gathering collector. I collect casually, but I haven't actually played the game in a long time. And I just kind of, if a new set comes out and I like it, I buy one booster box, throw it in my closet. I watch other people draft it. And if it looks like it's a cool draft experience, I'll keep it in there to draft with my friends later on down the road if we ever get together and want to play that game. So like I'm really casual, but I skip sets. I don't look at all of the set all the time. I feel like the way I interact with that hobby is probably the way that a lot of people interact casually with Pokemon. And so I think that there's like, I think there are some people that like really go hard at it for like a long time or for a short period of time. And then they kind of get burnt out. Or they kind of take a little break when life kind of goes back to their normal speed or whatever. They use it as an escape maybe. But Pokemon hasn't ever been like this thing that like people dump everything into.
No.
It was never that. It was always like a side thing. Like it's very recently that people like put everything into it, or that like people were encouraging other people to like. Okay, I famously talk about this Urza's booster box up here on my shelf. This Urza's Saga Magic booster box is my favorite sealed item I owned. It's like the best thing I own that I would never sell just because I love the thing. I bought that for $3,000 back in 2019. Okay, back right when I got back into the hobby of Pokemon. I was a Magic player, but I started collecting Pokemon again. I was like, you know what? I like collecting things. I'm gonna collect Magic too. So I went back to my favorite set. I bought that thing for $3,000, and so I thought I was ashamed. Like I didn't go and tell anyone after I did like my friends, my family. That was $3,000 I could have put in my 401k. That's $3,000 I should have done. I should have bought a new car or whatever it was. But I bought a stupid Magic the Gathering booster box. I was ashamed about it. You know when I wasn't ashamed about it? When it was suddenly became worth $10,000 after, 6 months later, after the fact. And it was like, and it's, that made me more comfortable to talk about it now. But like at the time, I was ashamed. And that's how I think a lot of people interacted with Pokemon for a long time. They weren't necessarily ashamed of it, but it wasn't something they were dumping. They're like, we're going out being like, I invested in Vivid Voltage booster boxes today. If you said that to your friends, like in 2018 or 2019, they would have looked at you and be like, how much? What? You did what?
I would say the majority of people, if they went up to their friends and said any Pokemon product, they would look at them and say, what are you talking about? Like, what is a Vivid Voltage? Is that a new movie coming out? Like
we're in Evolutions, because at that time it would have probably been like an
Yeah.
Evolutions or at the moment. But and you would have been looked like a fool for putting any money there, And
yeah, it's still like that today. And I've talked about this like a couple weeks back. I was at a barbecue with just a bunch of people, and like everybody's sitting up on the porch and everything, just talking. Not a single person talks about Pokemon, nobody mentions it. But if I were to sit there and like try to have a conversation, and even, people were talking about like the price of gas and stuff, price of gas is very expensive. Like that's what people were talking about. If I was like, oh, I spent this much money on Pokemon, they would have been like, you would have like forks would have dropped. People would have like fell off the chair and stuff, and they would have said, wait, huh? Like, we live in this weird world when we're talking to each other opposed to everybody else. And if you were to talk to everybody else, they would say you're insane.
I like this world though. I will say that this is a world that I feel like it's grown a lot, and it's been cultivated, and I like where it's grown. I enjoy what it's becoming. There are times where I hate this world, where I just look around like, God, I hate it here. But today I like it here. So I will say that. I don't mean specifically like I hate it here. I just mean, the Pokemon sphere sometimes can be a little infuriating, but other times it's, feeling good, and I'm feeling pretty good about it right now.
Yeah.
So I think the title of the video is pretty funny. Can I ask you something? I want to ask you something because I personally want to see something in this hobby that I haven't seen, that I'm going to personally make a little bit of an effort on my channel to see. And so I don't know but do you think that there's enough female representation in this hobby? Or do you feel like there's good female representation, or do you feel like they're treated well in this hobby?
I don't understand the question. Like, w-
I feel
are there
like
like ambassadors to the
when
hobby?
I was looking at my YouTube analytics the other day, it said I had 100% like male listeners, which is just strictly false. It is strictly false. There are people in this chat right now who I know identify as female, and they watch my stuff. They comment on my videos. So I don't, either they're not marked as female on their YouTube channel, or the analytics are getting it wrong, whatever it is. But or they lie about or they're just commenting and they're not listening. But that being said, I do feel like, and I felt like this for a long time, I feel like there is not enough, and it's always been, I feel like it's been a toxic space, somewhat toxic in some places. And I don't feel like there's been a lot of representation for the other side of the 50% of the population, right? Because in
Well,
Magic, at least
so
alone, there's not a lot of females because it's very like male for whatever. But Pokemon, I think, is a lot more friendly to like the more of that space, you know, and I would just like to see more of that. So I'm just curious if you think that there's like a lacking of that, because
so I think there's multiple parts of your question. Like, would I like to see more of that? Yeah, of course I like to see, but
that's
again,
mostly what I mean. It's like, would you like to
but
see it?
again, I look at my analytics and I know like how many people are watching this that are females to guys. Like, I'm not at 100%, but I'm at like 98%. So 2% of all my watchers are females. So if you were to, and so I will take a guess that that is a representation of like a ballpark for like that this hobby is probably made up of 98% men opposed to females, like give or take, just going off my analytics, because I don't really have a lot of other ways to go about that. Or like if you walk through collecticons and stuff, I'm sure there's a lot of females there. We went to Leonhardt
More
Pop
than
Shop.
2%. More
There
than
was, yeah,
2%.
way more females. So just going off my analytics, when I look at how many females out there are at least making YouTube Pokemon content, they far they far outperform, like, on a strictly percentage basis. I would say that there is way more representation by females in this hobby than the percentages are telling me. So just looking at what I look at, like, there's a lot of, like, female content creators making some good content, you know? So
That being said, still not very many ladies on the
but
channel,
in a
right?
percentage wise, based off of what my analytics are telling me, opposed to what my YouTube recommendations are telling me, I would say that based off of YouTube recommendations, there's actually like percentage wise, a lot of females in this hobby making content opposed to what my analytics are saying, or at least watching it. Again, maybe I'm just not making content that females like to watch, so therefore my analytics are skewed. But I could think off the top of my head like 5 different, Pokemon content creators very quickly that I follow that are females. And I only follow like 20 YouTube accounts. So when you're talking like my follows are made up of 20% females where my analytics are telling me only 2% are watching it, I wouldn't really go out and say, like, there's not representation. In
I don't
fact, I
know.
would say
I,
there's
I
an
sort of disagree a
over-representation in
little
that
bit.
sense.
I disagree a little bit about the fact that I agree there are a couple content creators out there who are pretty big, who are really great content creators, and they have to be females as well. But I do feel like that the vast majority of it is like, it's like a boys club, it feels like sometimes. And like when I look at a lot of the people that I have on, I was just looking at my YouTube channel. I haven't had a single woman on my channel in the entire time. I've had interviews, and like I've had all, so like that's gonna be something I just personally I'm gonna try to do, incorporate more, because I know that I have more than 0% female watchers, and I really respect them, and I want them to feel welcomed, you know. And I know that growing up in local game stores, like whenever a girl would walk into the local game store, the whole room would be like, and it would get kind of quiet, and like she would either be, it would be like, it would feel weird, like and maybe that's just social awkwardness, you know, and that's because nerds are a little bit more socially awkward sometimes. But I do feel like it could be a little bit more welcoming to the girls who want to get into it, the ladies and the non-binaries, and everyone who I'm not, not just the boys, you know. And I guess I always watch these lives, and I'm always seeing the same takes and the same people, and I would love to see just a little bit more. So I guess that's what I'm going to try to do on my channel, is I guess try to bring in some more of the great female content
Yeah.
creators that,
So I've had, I've had females on this channel before where I've like IVR, she's been on this channel before. I met her at Leonhardt Pop Shop. I've been on Thrifty TCG's channel as a guest. Like I want to say she's still in the chat right now. Like there's, but yeah, maybe like in that sense there is an underrepresentation, but it's so hard to say that based off of my analytics, if that makes sense, you know?
I
So
also see a lot of comments towards a lot of female content creators. I mean, I can't really control what the internet says. There's a lot of troll
so
comments online,
so
but
I don't ever see any troll comments except for like one female, which I won't mention her name, but all the comments towards her are based off of like while they might come off as misogynistic from a lot of people, I think a lot of it came off as defensive from a lot of people. Like the only female who I could come off in the top of my head thinking of who's people have said bad things about is because probably she attacked some of their friends and stuff, and they're just being in a way defensive.
I get
Same.
that. That's a touchy subject because people. I mean, it was like
Oh,
if
people
people
when
felt
people
attacked, that particular.
and you're talking like personal like friends
I'm not
got
even
attacked,
talking about
not
her in particular. I just mean in general. A lot of the time, like if I do see like a content creator like who puts out a post, like say she put out a picture and she has a dress on and she's showing a card or something, there'll be a lot of comments that are great, but there'll be a small subset of those comments that are like, "Oh, why are you dressed like that? Can't you just show the card or something?" Like, where it's like, "What? What are you?
yeah.
What is this?"
So I guess it depends how you take again, like I'm a male in this space, so it'd be very hard for me to like I mean, we definitely have to have
Right?
a
No, we're
female
both
on.
males talking about. We're just both.
Yeah,
So
but
we
like
don't really. We
I
can't
get
have a great
comments all the
opinion on
time,
it.
like, you know, like
Yeah.
people always like, "Oh, are you bald, PK? Why you always?"
That's
I've
why I
got
want to get them on.
yeah,
That's why I want to get them on my channel, though, PK. That's why, because I
yeah.
want to
I've
hear
gotten
that.
more
You know,
like,
I
"Why
want.
do you wear a hat?" comments in the chat, like than anybody could ever get, like because I wear a hat during my lives, and everybody's like, "Are you bald?" I want to see, like, people want to see the top of my head so freaking bad. It's like to like an almost like crazy level. But I feel like if you did the same thing to a female, where maybe you talked about her here, it would come off as very misogynistic, opposed to where people would say that
That's the
about
type of
me.
thing I'm talking about, though.
It
That's
just comes
uncalled
off at
for. Yeah,
it's hard to
that's
say.
uncalled for towards you too. I mean, the same type of thing happens, but I would say it happens more, and it's more sexually because that's not sexually oriented. Like you didn't feel like someone's trying to objectify you by calling you potentially. I mean, it's just kind of more mean than anything. Whereas if someone's saying like, "Hey, you're wearing a low cut shirt, you shouldn't do that," and you're just literally just wearing a shirt, you're just like, "What?" It probably feels like you were attacked for. I don't know. I guess I just was saying that's an aspect of the hobby I've been thinking about that I'd like to see more. And like
Yeah.
I've seen 4 or 5 really big content creators that are out there, and even they get a lot of you know nasty comments. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, I mean, I just don't see it enough. I'm sure it's out there, but I'm also in a way ignoring comments like that. Like, so I just I'm not the right person to talk about. Like, I don't know what they go through, and I hope that no one is getting like,
well, that's why I want to bring. That's what I'm saying. I feel like no one knows because no one's talking about it. It's not. There's not really representation. So like that's. It's just good to talk about. Like I feel like a lot of things like beefs that are in the hobby or people maybe who have problems with each other. They just kind of they haven't met each other or talked it out yet. That's one of the reasons why I like long form podcasts a lot. Is because it really gives you the space to really explore ideas to their full extent. Not this like clickbait, little clippy kind of. You can really talk things out. You know. And so I
oh,
just feel like that's one of the things I'm going to try to incorporate, like I said, on my channel. So shout out to Thrifty. If you're here, Thrifty, I've been meaning to have you on my channel for a while. I've been so busy lately. I heard you in this.
yeah,
We're going to have to hook up or something because Thrifty's always involved with all these chats. And I feel like she's been doing these awesome lives. So I do want to hear her take on this whole situation. So probably one of the things we'll talk about in our little talk is that topic because it's an interesting topic, I think, but one that I can't really speak as much on. Just
yeah. I've had a lot of conversations with Thrifty, and I've tried to get her on this channel in the past, and it just never really worked out because of her work schedule in the past. But I mean,
yeah, that's kind
if
of where we've been. I've been so busy, I haven't been able to reach out to her either. But just this
yeah,
conversation made me think about it, and I see her in the chat right there. But
yeah, and
it's
I've been on her channel. I was part of her first ever live stream she
I
did,
loved that with the
and it
shill
was
cam. Oh
it
my
was
god, that was amazing.
strictly just for support too. Like, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so happy you came on." I'm like, "Listen, I want to show my support because, you know, this is your first ever live stream, and you know, we want to, this is that weird thing too, where like, we want to see some people really succeed in this hobby. And she's one of those people, right? Like she was one of those people that I really wanted to see succeed. And it, to be honest with you, like her being a female, or if she was a male, would have had, you know, like no baseline for the reason why I went on that channel. Like the only reason I went on that channel, because I like her as a person, you know, male or
Right.
female, in my opinion, doesn't even matter at
And
that
it
point. I
shouldn't
just
matter.
really like her.
That's the whole point, is it shouldn't matter. And it's just about
Yeah.
like being welcoming, and because like if all you ever see is a whole bunch of like middle-aged dudes, and that's all you ever see in the hobby, or a bunch of dudes in the hobby, it's not that like you're being kept out. It just feels like you're not welcome, because it feels like you're not like them. So, but if you saw that more, it would maybe be more welcoming. And as someone who sells Pokemon, I feel like if more women were welcome to the hobby, that's more sales that I can make. So it just feels like a win-win to kind of, even if it's not like trying to force it on anyone. But my girlfriend, for example, like we collect together now, but she told me that like before we started collecting together, she never felt comfortable like collecting cards, because it just wasn't something that wasn't something that girls did back then in like the late 90s. It was like that was what the boys did, you know. And so she now does, and she enjoys it, and she's like, yeah, I don't feel that way anymore, but it's just a different time now. So like I feel like we're still playing catch up to a certain extent, and
Yeah.
and it's okay, you know, it's okay to play catch up. It's something that I feel like never gets talked about, because I feel like it's very like it's a warhead of a topic, because then people start getting like, oh, you're saying that girls aren't in the hobby, or like you're saying they can't be or they should be. It's like, I'm not
No,
saying anything
I
that
don't think,
should be. It's just
I
like,
think what your original question was more like on representation in the hobby,
yeah,
though, no? And I think if you went and looked at representation, I think you would actually find, and it depends where you're looking. Are you looking at like deep analytical 4-hour Pokemon podcasts? Or are you looking at like, you know, Pokemon TCG actually playing like gameplay? Are you on Instagram? Are you looking at, you know, females on Instagram? Are you looking at females on whatnot? Are you looking at females doing pack breaks? Like, are you looking at females on Twitter? Are you looking at, you know, when you start to look there, I bet you would probably find a greater representation than you would based off of, again, my super small subset of my analytics, which is saying 2% female,
we
you
can't
know?
believe those YouTube analytics. I guarantee you that I like on my whatnot streams, I was literally packing up orders, and like out of 20 orders, like 3 or 4 of them were women. I could tell by the name. Like the name is a woman's name, unless they're like stealing their wife's card and spending their wife's money on Pokemon cards, and then like, or their parents, even though you're not supposed to be under 18 on whatnot. So that's not, shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, it's, I'm pretty sure it's more than 0% for me. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just one of those things I've always seen. Like I've grown
Yeah.
up in the hobby, and I've always felt this way. It's always like the one girl in the comic shop. It was always the one girl, and she was always like, it was like, you know, the typical, it was the cliche, you know, she was the nerdy girl, you know, usually punk or goth, and really cool and really woke, and like, you know, played D, and I don't know, that was my experience. At least maybe everyone else has had a different experience to me, and they're like surrounded by all these women in their local game stores, and like, you know, learning how to be a ladies man. But I know that a lot of the nerds I know, they're a little bit awkward, and it would be good. It would be good, you know, to get more of that out there, because it's more mainstream now. I mean, for God's
Yeah.
sakes, you can go to the movies and you can watch a Marvel movie, and you can tell people you like Marvel, and it's cool. Like it used
Yeah.
to not be cool to like superheroes. You used to be a
So
nerd.
I never really experienced that, because I would always flock to people that I had shared interests with, and the people I always had shared interests with were maybe on the little bit more of the nerdier side. So I actually did meet a lot of people who were females who I just had shared interests with. And it's funny you mentioned Marvel, like that was a big part of it.
My best friend just had a baby. She was just born. I'm sorry. I just gotta say congratulations to my best friends Ryan and Kylie, who just had a newborn.
No, shout out to the best friends. That's awesome.
Sorry about interrupting. I just got the news too. I'm super happy for him. I have a new baby to go meet now.
But no, I mean, you bring up a good question. And again, I just, at the end of the day, it's just going to boil down to I'm just not the best person to answer that, because again, I'm going off of such a small subset or small sample size, which is just my analytics. So all I could tell you is the percentage of people watching this video, but I can't tell you like the hobby as a whole. But I would say like collecticons and stuff like that, there's probably a decent representation, which is more than a lot of people would expect, but I never think you'll see like that 50-50, you know.
No, that's wishful thinking. That would be amazing. I would love to see that because, like I said, I'm just a filthy reseller, so I just want more sales. So like that's like a boost, a huge boost
Oh
of
yeah.
sales. But other than that, it would be nice to see. I think it's more. I think it is moving in the right direction, though. That being said, just being able to have this conversation, talk it out, I feel like it's something that like we wouldn't have even been talking about this 10 years ago. It was like girls in the LGS. Next thing you're going to say is that they're going to make Marvel movies popular and superheroes going to be popular and people are going to like anime. Oh my gosh, you think people like anime? What kind of smoke? What are you smoking, buddy? But yeah, I think times are changing. It's interesting to see. And I'm
Oh
happy
yeah.
about it, to be
It is
honest.
interesting, and
I'm here
I
for it.
hope, yeah, like I said, I can't, again, I live in my little world of YouTube, like our little corner. We do have this little corner. So if there is like a lot of the misogynistic stuff going on, which I definitely think is possible,
I see it a lot. I'll just go out and say it. I see
I'd
it a
be
lot.
very
I try to call it
interested
out when
to,
I see it though, but
yeah, I'd be interested to see like what is going on because of personal reasons on a one-on-one beef opposed to like the macro of this hobby, you know? Or is it just very single isolated issues that have like huge backstories behind them? I would always be interested in like what's the catalyst for people to say certain things, you know? Like where they're direct attacks, stuff like that. So
yeah, and that's a whole nother thing too. That
yeah,
being said, though, I'm glad we had that talk because it's something I've been wanting to talk about on one of these lives for a long time with the community, and it's something that I think is worthwhile mentioning. I'm not trying to like bring any like throw any oil on the fire or fan the flames or any of drama or anything. I just think it's interesting to talk about. But I do want to talk about something that's more Pokemon related that I just
sure. Go
heard the
ahead.
other day. And it's an interesting thing that I think is going to be very different, a stark difference from the last time this release happened. But did you hear they're releasing a new ultra premium collection?
Yeah, I did see that.
It's like a
What's gonna
new
be in it?
sword and shield block, whatever, like V Star.
It's like one V Star and one V Max is gonna be in it, right?
Yeah. What
So
do you think that's going to be a stonking type product like we saw all the other UPCs in the past here?
it's hard to say. I mean, when you look at the last UPC we had, which was that I don't call it the Sword and Shield base ultra premium collection, but you know, like the first 4 sets, and it had the gold star or the gold cards in it, and then they separated that one big ultra premium product into 2 different like specialty ETBs, one with the
Why did they
Zamazenta
do
art,
that? Like, why
yeah,
did they
one
do
with the Zacian art. I think it's going to have way more of a feel to that sort of ultra premium collection
that?
than
Yeah.
it is going to opposed to like the celebrations UPC. Like most people don't, I mean, you think about how often do you hear people talk about celebrations UPCs opposed to how often you hear people talk about that sword and shield specialty UPC with that they broke up into 2 products with it. And I don't even know if people know what we're talking about with that, you know? But
Yeah, I
I
feel
have
like
I
most people forgot it existed. I think more people know about those ETBs that you were talking about that I think ruined that product than they know
yes.
about that actual product itself. I feel
And
like
they
that product could have been really cool if they never made those ETBs, right?
100%. Like
And so do
that
you think
was
they're going to do that with this new V-Star one? They're going to do some dumb thing where they're going to, nuke the product?
Pokemon can nuke whatever they want at any point they want, you know?
Yeah. I mean, they did just put a bunch of Cosmic Eclipse in those RCS boxes. Who knows what the hell they're going to do? That was the biggest surprise to me. That was the one
Yeah.
thing that's a
I think that was
curveball.
it though. I
That
think
was, yeah.
Pokemon had some Cosmic Eclipse in the back, and they were like, listen, we're not going to package this into booster boxes because technically no products have guaranteed hits, but more or less booster boxes are built to have some sort of like hit ratio to it, whether people want to like argue with me in the comments or not. Like there's a little bit of like a loaded booster boxes where you're expecting a certain amount of hits. If you have loose packs, there's no way you could pack a booster box. You could potentially go the ETB route, but ETB route like does again involve a little bit extra like materials, right? You got to reproduce the box and the sleeves and stuff. And again, we saw Darkness Ablaze, we saw Vivid Voltage. Pokemon also proved like, oh, you think ETBs are hard to reprint? Well, guess what? Pew pew pew, like goodbye market. So that's not out of the realm of impossible. But I think the easier route is Pokemon to do what they did. They put Cosmic Eclipse in those the Pokeballs, and they put Cosmic Eclipse in I think a couple tins, and then obviously the Arceus V product.
Yeah, and they put a lot of those. Like I can still buy those from my distributor, the RCS boxes, which is the biggest surprise to me. Is that I thought that would sell out like the first week.
I thought
And
so too. It's great product too.
yeah,
I mean, when we look back on Sword and Shield and we start to look at individual products, I think that will be one that kind of sticks out past everything else. First of all, the box itself is a premium box, meaning
yeah,
the feel to it,
it's
like it
got
has
texture.
that
Yeah,
texture. It's very similar to like the
the
EV
bolt-in.
premium boxes. Yeah.
The bolt-in boxes have the same texture. They're very nice. The new boxes they've been putting out for the collection boxes have all been very good quality, actually.
Yeah.
It
But
surprises
then
me.
you look at like, okay, you have an Arceus V box or you got the Dragonite V box. Like one of those in a couple of years or at the end of when things stop getting printed, like one of those is going to be on top of the other, like in demand. So I think this is a weird thing with Pokemon right now too, is the good products are pretty obvious at this point, and the bad products are pretty obvious at this point. I would say that right now there's nothing that is really super sleeping under the radar. Like you can look at a lot of products Pokemon are making and you could quickly identify like this is a good product or this is a bad product. It's not like, you know, some of the Sun
The
and Moon
Juniper
products.
boxes are underpriced right now.
Yeah, and especially when you look at it, well, opposed to like the Marnie milk cartons too, again. But like that just shows you like how much more people love Marnie versus Juniper, you know? It's the
The
same
boxes
product.
have better booster packs in them too.
Yeah, but you have like a fan favorite character versus maybe not a favorite character. Like it's just drastic, right? Like
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that I think that are probably a good plays to make. I don't know if I'm making them. Like you see, I have a bunch of them in my background. I'm not buying more of those Junipers, even though I think they're a little bit underpriced
yep.
because I can barely sell the ones I have. So even things that are underpriced, I think are still right. The liquidity is a little down. I don't think that means the hobby's in a bad place. I just think that in general, that the people who are in this hobby, they're not. It's not a go and spend everything on it. There used to be that FOMO in the last few years that people felt, but that FOMO is not there anymore. It's gone, and I think for good reason. Like they shouldn't have had that FOMO. That was
I think a lot
irrational.
of it has to do too is the competition is a lot different too. Everyone and their mother who wanted a distributor, who really wanted it, really grinded it, got their LLCs, they got so many of those freaking distributor agreements that distributors literally put their hands up like this and
Mm-hmm.
said, we don't want your money anymore because we honestly can't even take it because we have so many people who want this product. Like, keep in mind, these distributors, their entire business model is to sell people product. And they raised their hands and said, we can't. Like, that's not good business. Their whole model should be, we want anybody wants to freaking buy this crap, we should sell it to. This is coming from the same distributors who a few years ago were pleading with some of these buyers of Pokemon to please take some of this crap off my hands, you know? And these same distributors who 4 years ago were pleading for people to take boxes of Crimson Invasion and shit, like couldn't, were now
Mm-hmm.
the same people who said, we're not even accepting new people. So the competition for people like you who are trying to really grind products like that is so drastically different. And where people aren't going to want to pay the premium when they can go online, where people are really liquidating this stuff because they have they're able to make money off such razor thin profit margins that maybe somebody like you who has a very small like account maybe can't really operate off that sort of like profit margins, where if you got like a P football Pete, he's like, fuck it, I already got like 6 people that work for me full time, all they do is pack boxes, I can make a couple bucks and just to move this stuff, you know? And he's going to make his money on the good products, and maybe he'll lose $1 or two on the crappy products, where that's not good business for you. You're a one-man show. You don't want to start losing a couple bucks on products like
You
That's
get
not
2-3 sets in a row that are bad and something like that, it's starting to feel pretty bad. It's starting to feel pretty bad out there. Yeah, no, absolutely.
so.
And there are people who will be like, yeah, that's supposed to happen. That's just the market. But if it keeps on happening for, say, 10 years, like we saw in the bear market before 2016, it can extrapolate things. And then you get into a situation where you grow up and you have a town where you literally don't have an LGS in your town. And like you never were exposed to the stuff, or the only time you're exposed to it is through Walmart or Target, or you're getting it at the grocery store, which is really not the best situation. I know that a lot of people like to clown on LGSs because over the last couple of years they made a lot of money and they had less product and they had to jack up some of their prices, and people got kind of upset about that. But let's be real, they're not selling toilet paper. They weren't selling, needed things as collectibles. So I don't know how mad you can really get at that, but that all aside, but like you run into a situation where these LGSs will shut down, and then these game stores won't be there anymore, and then you're having to rely on the big corporations. And I don't know, I just don't like that. I grew up in that situation. Like my town, I lived in Oklahoma growing up, and I had a local game store in the late 90s, early 2000s. It shut down eventually and got run out of town basically because it couldn't keep its door open, because a super Walmart opened up and they started selling the same thing they were selling. And like now, they had to compete with Walmart, and it was the only thing they had. So they had to leave. So, I mean, that was bad business practices. Obviously, that was why I grew up not wanting to have an LGS, is because I saw something like that happen, and I saw the drought that was the comics, the era of the 90s. That's like, man, this is such a valuable thing in the community. And I think they're so meaningful. Like it's a safe place for kids to be. It's a good, healthy thing. It's like there's no drugs involved in game stores. Usually it's like you can be out on the streets smoking drugs, or you can be playing nerdy things inside. It's much safer and better for your kids to be doing that. And yet, like, it was not a good place to be as a game store owner. So like nobody wanted to do it unless you were like this like saint. And you were viewed as like, it was like you're doing it's like being a teacher. You're doing it, you're not going to make money, but you're doing it because you love it. And I just don't like to see that. I think that it's worth more than having to just get by. I think game stores deserve to make a little bit more than that. And I just don't think the hobby values them like they do. And the hobby is still, I don't know. I just hear a lot of, like negativity thrown at game stores, which I think is like from people who have never probably walked into a game store, or maybe don't recognize what they actually bring in value to the community. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you where you say that. It's just, I think what happened was, maybe I talked about this in my last live when I had Radar on, and I don't want to get like into it again, but I had one, I wouldn't even call it a falling out with my local game store, where I was frequenting his store for a decent amount of time, buying Pokemon products from him, and then all of a sudden, like, his prices increased, pretty drastically overnight, and I felt like he wasn't being accommodating to maybe his true clientele, who had, like, supported him through the down periods, and now through the up periods, like, kind of turned his back in a way, or at least priced out his loyal clientele. Whether he did that in, like, inadvertently or not, or if he did that purposely, I will never really know. But it's like, what do you do? It's like, sometimes you get, what is it? What's that saying? When the getting's good, go get it, or something like that. Like, maybe that's what they got to do.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the reality of the factor is, like, when you're buying a card, you always want to get it for the lowest price, and you want the best quality card for the lowest price. And when you're selling a card or a product, for example, like, you want the product at the lowest price and you want to get the best quality product for it. But then when you're selling that same thing, you want to get the highest price for it, and you want to be able to dump your worst item and get the highest price for it. So like, if you have 3 PSA 9s, for example, you're going to look at all 3 PSA 9s. You're going to sell the one with the little white dot in the corner. You're not going to sell the perfect one that's a 10. You're not also going to close your eyes and at random pick, because you're that good of a person. You're going to try to sell the one that you don't like as much. And you're also probably going to sell it and try to get more money for it then, you know, you would want to buy it for yourself. Because if you had the choice, you would buy the one that was perfect, but not. So like the same thing with that store. When your situation came up, I'm sure he wanted to sell it to you, sure. And he would have sold it to you if you didn't have 10 other people lining up behind you to buy it for a higher price. And it put him in a situation where he's like, well, I understand I want to sell it to you, but I can make more money here. And I don't think he was wrong to take that. He may have lost you as a customer, and then he may have been wrong. Long term, he maybe lost more money by losing that faith. And he could have maybe made a split decision and seen that on your face, right? But I don't know if that's like I just don't think that I would realistically expect the store owner to be able to. And it's at the moment it would feel that way, right? But I'm sure now thinking back on it, you're probably thinking like, maybe I should go back to the game store and see how he's doing.
Sure.
Just because, like,
yeah. I mean,
you
I
know,
also look. Yeah. I mean, I also look at it. This is the problem. Like, I'm like my feelings are going to drive a lot of my factors. It's the same way. Like, honestly, I'd probably feel a little salty with you if, let's say, you had a card for sale, and I really wanted that card, and I was like, hey, I probably wouldn't do this. This is always like stupid ways to buy Pokemon cards. If anybody ever tells you this, you should probably tell them no. But let's just say hypothetically, I said, hey, I can't buy this card this week, but let me buy it in a month from now. And you're like, sure, PK, I'll hold on to this card. And I was like, and you're like, yeah, just give me like $700. And I'm like, oh, that's a fair price. I appreciate that. And a month from now goes by, and you're like, I'm like, hey, I got your money. Here, I saved it up for a month. Like, here's your $700. And then you have said back to me like, ooh, you know, PK, I know I told you that a month ago that I'd give you this card for 700, but I was looking at recent sales. This card's creeped up to $900. Like, I can't sell it to you for $700 anymore. And I would probably say to you like, okay, like I totally understand. And I probably just wouldn't talk to you anymore, to be
so
honest.
suppose, and I would understand that. Now, suppose the other thing happened. Say you said you wanted to buy the card for $700 and you didn't have it then in 2 months. I said, sure thing. And I said, I'll hold it for you for 2 months. And then the card goes down $200 to $500. Then I could have sold that card for $700 at that time. I said it was cool, but then it went down to 500. You say, hey man, can I get it for 500? Market price is 500 now. I look like a bad guy for saying, no, you said 700. I want 700. And you're like, nah, I'm cool with that. Then you ghost me.
Then you should hate me.
Right. So it goes both ways, right?
It does go both ways, but
so I feel like I see this a lot with pre-orders, and it's the same. It's the reason why I don't take pre-orders in my store. In my business, I've never ever taken pre-orders, because I've seen in the time I've done business, I've always seen sets go up on release. Now we're in a different time now where sets will actually go down after the pre-order price.
And that's why
I could start taking
is not a good idea right now.
So I could start taking pre-orders now, and it for me as a business would seem like a good idea. But the problem with that I would have is that I would then have people, once the set comes down, I would have a certain percentage of those people who want to then cancel their orders for the pre-order prices and then go buy it at the cheaper price. And then I locked up my product for that amount of time that I couldn't do something with. I set it aside, and for the customer who then is going to back out of me. So it is very much so. A lot of the time, like, customers never want to see things from another side, but it's both. It goes two ways. And that's why I don't do pre-orders. That's why I don't play that game. And that's why I don't do holds like that. Now, if you were to say, hey, Josh, hey, old card shop, I want this card for $700. I don't have $700 right now, but I want it in 2 months.
I wouldn't do that. That wasn't a great example.
I know.
That's not like how I deal with
not you particularly, but if a person did that and then they said, I want to give you $100, I want to give you $1 to put a down payment on it so you hold it, I would feel morally obligated to sell no matter what, if the price went up or down. If they didn't give me $1 and if no money was exchanged, it was just like, hey, yeah, I'll hold it for you, buddy, I would not feel an ounce of regret saying to that person, if the card went to $1,000 to you, even if it was my friend PK who wanted to buy the card and I said I would sell it to you for $700 and it's $1,000 now, I wouldn't feel an ounce of regret saying, hey man, you didn't give me any money, you ghosted me for 2 months, like you said it. But people do that all the time. How many times do people like when you're selling cards? I know you sell cards on eBay. Do people ask you for a picture of the front and the back of the card? You go in your card, you go dig it out of your box, stop what you're doing in your day, you take a picture of the back, the little corner they said they wanted a picture of, and they just ghost you. You just wasted 15 minutes of your time for what? For what benefit? So someone can just play this dog and pony show of like, yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You know how many times like people will bid on auctions and win them, and then I don't get paid out, or like I even get, it's just like, so I would say that there's a couple things you
That's
don't get
show
paid out.
bidding happening sometimes in action because eBay is
Well, you get people
irresponsible.
give you offers on cards, you accept it, they don't answer it. I mean, they don't accept it. I mean, this stuff happens all the time. Like people don't pay for auctions, people don't pay for buy it nows, but that's just part of doing business on eBay. Like that stuff happens all the time, you know?
Yeah, and like I said, it's a matter of like, it goes both ways. Like I have a lot of sympathy for a lot of things, but other things I have zero sympathy for. And a lot of the like stuff when I hear about people having like problems with sellers about not giving back pictures or all these types of things, I'm just like, yeah, you probably don't sell a lot of cards, do you?
Yeah.
You don't deal with a lot of people, do you?
Well,
Because if you did,
so this is the thing. You should always put just front and back pictures, and a lot of people have actually been going to that because I think that's the right way to do it. Like TCA used to never post photos of the back of his cards. Now all his listings have the back. And I do believe that sellers should do that, even when it comes to like graded cards and stuff like that. Like now that's a whole nother issue. But in my opinion, if you are selling raw cards, you should have a front and back on it anyways.
I don't think a seller should do anything except for sell at the price they care to do. I don't think a seller, unless they're bait and switching.
I'm not a buyer for a card that I can't see the back ever, though.
Right, and I believe that people who are buyers for cards that aren't seeing the back are people who are more gamblers and are willing or thinking they're going to get it for a better price because there's not a back shot. So they think that they'll be able to get it a little less than someone who did list it with a back photo. And so maybe they're thinking it's worth the gamble. So I think
if you're doing that as a seller, you should expect to get returns. Like,
and I have one. So if you list a card, a PSA 9, right? Or okay, let's go a little spicier. If you list a CGC 8.5 that has a dent, you see a front and a back picture of it. Are you circling, or are you in the heading or the description? Maybe not the heading, not in all caps in the heading, but maybe the description. You put a little thing. Do you say exclamation? This card is damaged. No. Or do you just leave it to the customer and you just kind of put a clear heading and you give it a front and back picture and you just say at CGC they graded it. And so since a grader graded it, is it therefore it's not your responsibility? But then when it's not graded, it's your responsibility. So that's why I say I don't think a seller has a responsibility to do any one thing or the other as long as they're sending the card that's advertised. It's not a bait and switch.
When I send when I send the card to grading, I'm paying for their opinion on that card. So I'm going to sell the opinion that I paid for on that card. I'm not going to pay for somebody else's opinion and then sell my opinion.
So you won't circle it then, and you won't put it in the head. It's just going to say CGC 8.5, whatever it is. And then it's like, hey, CGC graded, it's cool. I'm not saying that's a right or wrong thing.
I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but like there's a reason why PSA still has their money back, or not money back guarantee, but if the card was misgraded, the argument would be with PSA, not with me.
So what if PSA doesn't uphold? I see Rattle in the chat here. He's actually gone through about
they don't uphold. I mean, there's a lot of like
terrible. So then it is kind of, it's not on PSA then who's they keep on passing the buck around. It's just on the buyer.
This is the thing. When you're, again, just because I think that card was misgraded, when it goes to PSA and they regrade that card, you're using their judgment. Any PSA card that is currently in a slab, anyone that exists, you are buying that card based off of somebody's opinion. Never a single time a PSA card that is graded are you buying that card that is graded by PSA because of the seller's opinion. That's just not how buying cards work.
But the seller is choosing to sell a card, or whether or not they grade the card.
So now you're just
so is it dishonest for someone to reslab?
The seller is a better grader than somebody who was paid. Again,
what if the seller has the same card they've cracked out 5 times and they know that it was a set, i.e. Illustrator Pikachu, and it gets upgraded, is it dishonest? Is it dishonest, like, to then grade it because the same person did it, or then they have to sell it to someone else and then it shades that I don't understand where the line is drawn, because I feel like it's sort of like subjective. It feels like, because like, what grading company? So CGC doesn't have a guarantee, do they? So like, if you send it to them and it's worth,
I don't know, but I would say no, because CGC is a bad company.
so only
I would say that
PSA and
CGC
only
would never
companies with guarantees are
pay out.
okay to sell cards that are damaged, because then they're upheld by them, whereas the other companies, they're bad companies. I don't know. I'm trying to find the logic there. That's all.
No, I mean, the problem is you're talking about paying for somebody's, you know, it's the same way like when you buy a house, right?
It's almost like grading's a farce. Wow.
Here, I'll give you an example. You buy a house, the bank's gonna make somebody come in and appraise your house in order to give you that mortgage, right? Maybe you want that house and you think that house is worth $400,000, but your appraiser is only going to appraise that house at $350,000. Good luck telling the bank that your opinion is more valuable than the person they paid. You know, the bank's going to tell you to go kick rocks. They're going to say your house is worth $350,000 because the person I paid to, you know, appraise your house said that's what it's worth. It's the same way as grading a card. The person I paid to grade your card said your card's an 8. I don't care that you think that that card is a 7, because I paid for their opinion to appraise that card, or maybe not appraise, but to assign a grade to it. Like, and if
it doesn't guarantee a cost with the grade, though. The grade doesn't guarantee any sort of like value per se. It just guarantees an opinion.
The grade guarantees a value because PSA has prices associated to their cards and their grades.
I've heard
otherwise upcharges wouldn't be a thing.
So there is no market value. There's no such thing as market value. There is the last sold. There are data points. There's the last sold, and
PSA will upcharge you if your card is worth enough money. It doesn't matter if that Illustrator
that's a whole nother
Pikachu is
thing,
an 8,
though.
or if that Illustrator Pikachu is a 10. There is dollar amounts assigned to certain grades based off of fair market value.
Some people get upgraded, it's upcharged, and some don't. And so PSA upcharging for some cards and some that they don't is like very subjective, and that's a whole nother issue. We
don't know if that, so I don't work at PSA. I can't tell you if that is a subjective thing or if that is just an accounting issue that PSA has, where some cards are slipping through the cracks and some are not. I couldn't tell you why some get upcharged and some don't. And especially you'll see some submissions with like the same card on it, and one of that card gets upcharged and one of them doesn't. Same card, same grade. I want to say that is an internal issue at PSA, but I'm not qualified to like talk which one that could be.
I think PSA, when Nat took over, he realized that whole time they weren't doing upcharges properly for the bulk, and it was all this money they're leaving on the table. And then they saw the hobby explode. He's like, look, we can't very well make a lot more money, and we're shut down right now. He's like, we can't very well take more submissions. How can we make more money as things are coming back so that we can actually do something that's only a little bit scummy? It's just like, it's in the contract. You should have expected upcharges, but it just never happened before. And then they suddenly started doing it because, okay, new management, you got to find some money on the table. I get that. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I get why they did it. But look, you all know I'm always on some shit. I'm on my old bullshit here tonight. I like to have fun and talk. I'm very candid, right? I hope I didn't offend anyone, but you all know how I feel about grading. And I'm just, PK and I see differently about grading here. And I think it's fun to have this conversation because lately I've been feeling so much more. It's just so much more apparent how much of a scam grading seems like to me, and how they're just like leeching money away from the hobby. And I know you could say that about pack breakers like myself. You could say that about auction houses, like, even eBay, who provides, I think, a pretty good service to sell items. They still take a ton of money from every sale. And for what, and so like you could say that too, but I think it's a good conversation to have, especially as people are sending out like hundreds of cards guaranteeing PSA to have 6+ months of labor that they can just do whatever they want with at this higher price to just put into plastic. I think it's a good conversation to have for sure.
Yeah, it's the thing. It's as long as in order for anybody to sell a product or sell a service, and that's kind of what PSA does. They sell two things. They sell a service, which is grade your card, and they sell a product, which is that slab, I guess, technically, right? Like that's what you're paying for whatever people want to say. What it comes down to is you're paying for somebody's opinion. They are a service provider. There's a lot of service providers that exist in the world, provide all different types of services, and there will be customers as so that service provider will last as long as there is customers. And trust me, there's a lot of things in this market and a lot of things in this hobby I do not agree with, but sometimes there's just things that are around to stay, you know. That's one of them. Hey.
Yeah, and I've always been critical on grading since I've like really looked into it more, because like I said, in my previous experience of the hobby, I was like a player and I didn't really grade cards. I wasn't as much of a collector, as much more of a competitive player. And so like, it wasn't really my comfort. I wasn't in my comfort zone with that. Now I'm very much so in my comfort zone. I mean, I turned down a $2,000 slab on this piece of cardboard the other night, like without blinking an eye. And so I'm more comfortable in the market. You know, those Magi cards I love, those things are ridiculous. Those things are just gold mine. But the market is irrational, I still feel. And I will still
the market will stay irrational longer than you'll ever stay solvent. I think
it's true. And I'm going to keep on harping on it as long as I see it. I guess that's all I'm on tonight, is about the grading thing. I'm also excited about the future of modern. Like for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future of the new era, like Scarlet and Violet. Like if they're gonna do something new, like come on, baby, get rid of those rainbow rares. Please get rid of the rainbow rares and just get rid of them and do something new. But I am very excited about things in general, and I'm curious. Do you want to share any of the plays that you've made or that you're thinking of making in the recent market? Because I know right now. I just cracked
a shitload of Pikachu and Zekrom and Charizard and Reshiram premium collection boxes from Walmart, and
I have some on my shelf right back there. I love those.
I just cracked a bunch of them and sent them to PSA with my last submission. That's a play I just did.
Those cards came out garbage, didn't they? The little corners.
They weren't garbage, but they weren't the quality I was expecting. But I cracked a lot of them.
It was just like these. The same issue with these. They were garbage. Like when I got out of like a million of those, I got one good one. That was the one I was holding.
I think that's going to be an easy play for short-term play, and short-term play means getting those cards back at $18 a graded. And what does Z&G say? Like never punished. I think you're going to be hard pressed to not sell that card for $20 in a 9, and you'll probably get a pretty decent amount of money in a 10. Like 9s in that card, I think is an easy break even. And anytime you can make a 9 break even, and then the up or like the
so you cracked those boxes. You actually cracked the boxes for them. You didn't just buy the singles.
No, I cracked the boxes. Had some packs.
So I feel like those are what, like $60 right now. The boxes, they're $50 when they came out, so they've appreciated only a couple dollars. They haven't done so well in this market. Nothing really has. And there's 10 packs, right? Yep. The cards are $10. That's a card I've actually been thinking of the same play on. I have 6 of the Pikachu and 6 of the Charizards. So basically like a case of each. And so I was considering cracking, but I didn't do it. I'm going to keep those sealed, and I'm going to buy the singles, I think, instead, because I think that's.
I bought some singles too, but I did crack some boxes too.
Yeah, they're all about the same quality. I feel like people are pretty good about taking them out. But another play that I see a lot of people making that I might make myself, and this is not going to be any sort of a thing that anyone's not heard, is VMAX Climax. I don't even collect Japanese, and VMAX Climax is such a good set that I'm like
what, character rares or?
No, just the boxes. Just literally.
VMAX Climax. Sorry, yeah.
VMAX Climax, a case of it. I'm going to grab a case and just throw it in my closet, I believe. And I think that's what I've heard all the big PokeTubers. It's like when Evolutions was still $90 booster box right before the big boom. And I heard like Rev, and I even heard Leonhardt and some of the big guys saying, you know, people ask me all the time, what's a good set to jump in and invest in, or just to throw, to buy to open. Get an Evolutions booster box. They're $90. So many videos said that. And I feel like the VMAX Climax for a while is going to be like that. It's just such a good set.
Could be. I think it's a play. I stay away from Japanese. It's not.
Oh, I do too. Like I hardly have any Japanese, but that's the first one in a long time. Oh, in Lost Origin, did you see we're getting the Pikachu and the Mew?
I did not see that. Is it?
Gold. The
Oh,
gold
I saw the
Pikachu.
gold Pikachu. I didn't see the Mew.
What, chat, help me out. It's a Mew, right? Is it the Mew, the second gold card in Lost Origin? I'm pretty
Oh,
sure, chat.
is it?
I'm not
I don't
sure.
know.
But yeah. Yeah, I think it's the Mew.
Lost Origin's gonna be a good set. It's gonna hold the stand. It's gonna like it's gonna stand the test of time. I think is gonna be a good way to put it.
So is that set number 12 then, Lost Origin? That's our last Sword and Shield block set?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they usually do 12. That's number 12. They have 12.5 after that, which is the like bonus expansion, Hidden Fates type set. What the hell are they going to do with that?
I don't know. Yeah, do you know any of the cards or what they're supposed to do?
My distributor hasn't told me anything yet. Usually when he gets invoiced or when he gets like a son of a notification, he'll show me the line, like what it says, and he doesn't know anything because he's a boomer. He's like, hey, what is this? Like, it'll say like a Pokemon name, then a number or something, but I haven't seen any news about it yet. They're probably keeping it pretty close to the chest.
Yeah, everyone's saying it's Mew is the other gold card.
Yeah, it is the Mew, I think. And it looks really good. Honestly, having the VMAX
set,
Pikachu and the VMAX Gold Pikachu and the Mew, like banger of the set. But here's the thing. The thing about VMAX Climax is it has all of that. It has all of that and more. It's pretty ridiculous set. Like I said, I don't even like Japanese, and I'm over here shilling that set. So you're welcome, Kai.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably stay away from that. I just got too many plays I still make in English that I'm just not a Japanese collector.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm more of an English guy. I will be the last person. I'm not the last person, but I always am. I like the yellow borders. Like the yellow borders are nostalgic to me. I know a lot of people like the silver borders. I've heard some people saying they want to change English to silver. I would not like that. I enjoy
there's
the
some
yellow
silver
borders.
border English cards though.
Which you mean the
any
World
EX
Championship?
Card.
The World
No,
Championship.
like EX cards.
Oh, that's different. That's real silver. That's like alt-art silver. I mean like silver border.
You're
like
talking like silver
regular
border like Japanese cards.
Japanese, yeah.
Yeah. So like a plain silver border.
And I like the old Japanese backs too, you know, the dark blue pocket monsters. So like I'm nostalgic towards that.
Yeah, old back cards do hit a little different than new back cards. New back cards, even like the old new back cards, they always feel different. Like you look at the front and you're like, oh yeah, this is an old card, and you turn it around, and you're like, ah.
I always get catfished by the Trade Please Imakuni card because there's an old back version and then there's a new back version, and the old back version is hollow and the new back version is like the new Japanese back that's not hollow or not special at all. So I'll be on like an auction house and I'll be like, oh, cool. Look, it's the Trade Please. Imakuni's Trade Please. And then it turns around, it's like, it's just the CD promo one or whatever it is.
There's a silver border card for you.
Oh, no, I love those. Like, don't get me wrong. I love my silver borders. Here's a whole set of Arceuses from Platinum Arceus.
Cards for you.
Yeah, I do love those silver borders. I don't like the other silver borders, though, like the new Japanese. Like, I much prefer that bright yellow, like the yellow. I mean, it's just so nostalgic, the yellow border to me. It's so, like, you know, it's great.
It's classic, man.
It is.
How many of those Pikachus did you grade in 10s with CGC? What are those selling for right now? Just one?
Like $75, like maybe $100 if I'm lucky. Like
that's pretty good for a celebrations card, man. That's what $1.
No, it's great, but like it's you send probably. I only sent one and I got one, but you could probably send 10 and not get a 10. I got really lucky on that one. I will say that maybe some of my discrepancy from PSA is just me being a little bit hurt by how they've treated me in the past. And maybe it's still an ongoing thing, and maybe I'd like PSA more if I wasn't so personally hurt by them. But I can get CGC
personally
10s.
Hurt me. Let me show you on this teddy bear where they hurt me.
yeah, that's everywhere. You could just point everywhere on the teddy bear because that's where they hurt me. I'll get my Princess Diana bear out, but no, I feel like I get more CGC 10s than I get PSA 10s, which is such a weird thing. I am a lot harsher on my grading for my cards I'm sending to CGC. And whereas PSA, I'm just like, just give them anything. Give them a card bent in half. They'll give it a 10, whatever. So maybe I'm a little bit disrespectful to PSA and it's showing. But no, I do have I I have a recent love of the blue labels, PK. I know that a while back we talked. I said I'd never grade with CGC again. My tone has changed. I've definitely changed my feelings.
Because you're a greedy investor flipper. That's why.
That's exactly why, because
You're not buying. Don't even shill CGC right now. You're grading cards to make money. The same
of
reason
course. That's what we're doing. We were talking about making money all night.
Cards with PSA and make more money. That's where it boils down.
Are you trying to say that you took me as a filthy collector, boy?
No, you're upset. You're upset because you're grading your cards with CGC, and you know there's going to be a flood. There's going to be a flood of those same cards from PSA are going to roll out in 6 months from now, and you better fire sale every single CGC slab you have pre that
in
flood.
6 months from now, I'll have 20 CGC orders. I'll have sold that same card 20 times before the time.
Fire sale those CGC slabs before the bulk PSA, because
literally
but this is the thing. The hobby has never seen true competition with PSA competing with CGC. There was never competition.
Right.
PSA was shut down. I mean, sure, they were open $100, $600, $300, $200. They were fucking shut down. Like, you don't know real competition until PSA opens up the floodgates. And guess what? From everything that it appears to be from the outside looking in, PSA has ramped up their grading ability to max. They're grading like 800,000 cards a month. That's a lot. You get in close to 1 million cards a month. Like CGC,
large market share. Yeah. That's
CGC,
what they need. They have to, because CGC is coming up right on. They're nipping on their heels, baby. They're nipping on
the prices aren't there. And that's the thing. When
9.5 sell for higher than PSA
when they become equal, when CGC is equal to PSA, when turnaround times become comparable, when prices are comparable, that's it. RIP CGC. They won't.
I will be sending everything to PSA when that's the case. Did you not just hear what I said? In 6 months' time, I will turn the same card 10 times before getting it back from PSA. That's the move. The move is
you're assuming that the flood of cards will be enough to continuously send PSA to backlog them for eternity. Every time they lower price, we just talked about it earlier in the stream. Pokemon did 9.2 billion of those cards. Out of those 9.2 billion, how many of those cards are truly worth it to be graded by PSA? Right?
Yeah, a very small percentage. I'd say like
let's
1%.
Just say it's a couple millions. That's like a month or two of PSA's entire grading abilities. We burn through whatever we want graded. Like CGC will be able to pump out stuff eventually faster than we'll be able to submit. Sure. With these big when it drops down to $10, there's going to be a lot. But PSA eventually, if they are building to the way it appears, I mean, they're opening that New Jersey plant soon. That hasn't even opened up. You're talking they're now going to add an East Coast arm to a massive grading company who can turn out 1 million cards. If PSA is somehow able to double their ability to grade cards, which they've already proved multiple times in the last couple of years, they can do that. What a Neo premium file like.
Oh no, they're very easy to hit. Chat was just saying, how often do you get 9.5s? 10s are very easy, and 9.5s are even easier, especially with new CGC grading things. I think you guys are thinking that, like, I think that CGC is like better than PSA or something, which has nothing to do with that. It's just the fact of the matter is the market still is irrational, and CGC is so much quicker, and their grading. Everyone likes to say that they don't get the cards don't get the same prices as PSA. It's strictly false. PSA 9s are not getting great prices anymore. PSA, they do. Some do and some don't. But for the most part, most CGC 9 or 9.5s will get a comparable to a PSA 9.
CGC 10s had premiums. CGC started grading more 10s. The premium for those 10s has fallen off a cliff. And eventually, they're going to be comparable to a PSA 10. And once they become even relatively strictly dollar amount.
So, yes, I would say if you were looking strictly at like old prices for PSA and you're quoting like an old vintage WotC card, I think that card will definitely have like a more of a premium than say like a CGC 9 or 9.5, because everyone knows it's hard to get a PSA 10 in an old.
It's true for modern too. Go look at Red's Pikachu. Go look at a Reds Pikachu and CGC 9.5. Look at a PSA 10. You're probably talking $50 price difference on a $150 card. You're talking a 50% premium to have that card in a PSA slab, CGC 9.5, same exact freaking card. Premium,
Here's a
drastically
question
different.
for you, PK. Here's a question I asked, I think that's very interesting. Knowing what we know about grading scales, and you can even replace this with BGS black label or a BGS 10 if you'd like, but if you had a modern card and you had something that you really liked, like a modern card, I'm not saying you want this card graded, because personally, modern card graded doesn't do it for me. I don't get any rumblings in my my nethers when I see a modern graded card, but some people do. It does it for them, and I'm not going to judge that. But if you had the choice between the same price and the same card in a CGC 10 and a PSA 10, what would you choose? Blue or white label? Or if you don't like CGC,
What am I
replace
doing
that
with
with a
the
Beckett.
card? Am I putting in my piece? I'm going to go with the PSA.
In the personal collection, even though you might think that the PSA might not be as stronger, you couldn't see the back of the card. No, you could see the back of the card. It's the same card. Well, actually, if it's the same card, you're going to go with PSA because you like the label more. I personally, in this card, I like the blue.
I never used to like I used to like the CGC label more. I made a video once where I compared CGC, Beckett, GMA, and PSA. I had all 4 slabs, all the same card graded, and I just compared the slabs. CGC won, but CGC has lost me as a customer. They'll never get me back after like everything they've done.
They're shady. Like the fact when their head grader was sitting there and grading the jungle cards right next to Chum Lee, and they're trying to say that's objective grading. It's like, what? And then my friend Travis from Going Twice on Whatnot, he's one of my constituents on this app. He made a partnership with CGC and started sending hundreds. This is right when they started getting those easier gradings. I have a tinfoil hat. I think that Travis was partially responsible for them starting to grade a little easier by going and talking, be like, look, if you guys will grade a little easier, I'll send you X amount of cards, because of my Whatnot streams, I'm just printing and just sending cards constantly. You'll get all this business, you'll get all this exposure through people getting the cards and getting the service on the Whatnot, that all you have to do is grade the cards a little easier. And it's good for you too, because then people will want to send to you. And then CGC said, you drive a hard bargain.
That's not how you treat your customers. You don't build an entire grading scale for an entire year, grade 1.3 million cards, and then say, oh, by the way, all the early adopters of CGC,
it's shady and it's messed up. And I totally agree. And those people got burned. I sent like 100 cards to CGC, got a slew of 8.5s and 9s. Not a single 9.5.
I sent a bunch of Skyridge cards. Then I had to fucking look at that CGC perfect fucking Charizard with the most off-center front I've ever seen. And then the head grader said, yeah, well, the back was perfect. What the hell? What does that mean?
Up. That's bad.
What happened to eye appeal? You're telling me the eye appeal of a crystal Charizard is the back of the card? That's where the eye appeal came in, and not the front of that card. That's super
so
off-centered.
shady.
And then they had the balls to post that on their Instagram, like, "Hey, look at this card."
Yeah, no, and I'm not disagreeing with you on that. That's my point, though. They've gone through some shady
bad business and rub it in everybody's face.
But PSA, though, how many lawsuits? How many class actions against PSA are out right now? How many scandals with different auction houses has PSA been involved in? It's just one of these, you kind of got to pick your poison. So like they're all, and then Beckett isn't even.
And the black label. Yeah.
That's just that scandal.
Debacle of giving like that one. Yeah. But
So once again, it all comes down to this, like it's all a scam, right? And if it's decided to all be a scam, then, and if they're all scamming, then you kind of have to take objectivity. And to me, even though I agree with you that CGC has done some shady things even recently, and changing that grading scale, it's a big FU to everyone in the past who submitted to them. And what are they going to do? Reach out to everyone and say, hey, send your cards back. We'll give you a free grade and we'll regrade it for you. But they can't do that because it makes them look bad. So realistically, you either have to just suck it up and move on as a business and accept that those 1.3 million cards you graded before, people are going to be pissed and just move on. Or you kind of, and on the other side, as a consumer, if someone who just sells cards, I was also in that same boat. We talked. I said, I'm never sending to CGC again. This was before that change. When they changed over and it became easier again to get 10s, and they stopped duping us with that 8.5, I had to reevaluate, and it was a tough pill. It was a bitter pill to swallow. But here's the thing: I don't grade because I'm like a moral stand-up and I think it's great. I've sat here for an hour or two and I've been saying how I hate grading. I think it's a farce and a scam. And then I'm over here grading cards and selling them to the market every day. So like, I clearly feel a certain way, but it's like the market also feels a certain way. And who am I to argue with the market? I'm just sitting here ranting and railing about it, but then selling into it, which is, I think that's the only honest thing I can really do is like, I'll be candid and, but at the same time, when I list an 8.5 with a dent, I'm going to post a front and back picture. Don't worry, chat. It's going to be front and back. I'm not going to just be a front picture, but I'm not going to circle the dent. I'm not going to put in the description, hey, I graded this as CGC instead of PSA because they're a little easier on dents, and PSA will give it a 5, whereas CGC is going to give it a 7. I'm not going to sit there and educate them. That's not on me. I'm going to sell the card. And if they return it, sure, they can open up a case. That's fine. I don't accept returns when I'm selling cards, and you have 3 days to do it because I'm a scummy, evil seller. Go ahead. I don't care. But it's the reality. It's just the reality, but that's where it is with grading. I think it's irrational, but I think, it's still something that we all do. I'm just going to sit here and say how I feel about it. I can't sit here and be like, oh, I think this is the best thing ever, when I definitely don't.
Yeah, saying grading's irrational, you could just say that about this entire hobby. You can name me anything about this hobby, I'll tell you, like, it's probably irrational,
Yeah, and I mean, it's
people
like...
People pay a premium in this hobby for a lot of different things. Listen, do you have any Pokemon booster boxes behind you? Like any vintage ones?
I have 2. They're above me. I have a Power Keepers and a first edition Fossil. Yeah.
All right. So you're Power Keepers, right?
Yeah. I love my Power Keepers box.
It's the only one. There's probably a half a cent Wizard of the Coast wrapping that box.
Yeah.
I can go over your house and go like this and peel it off. And then I will take your booster box and I'll make it lose a insane amount of money.
I'm sweating right now.
So we give PSA shit because people pay a premium for PSA graded slabs, but you got all these sealed collectors out there. That little half a cent cellophane wrap or you know what? I don't even take it off. I just put a slit in it. I put a nice little slit right down the middle of it. So it's still wrapped, but now there's a hole in that plastic. Sealed collectors are just as rational as PSA collectors. This hobby is full of irrational shit, full of it.
I can't wait until PSA or some reputable, you know how I feel about PSA, some sort of a service offers some sort of a sealed. So PWCC is starting, since they got scammed by the resealed expedition, they're starting to open up the booster boxes in a video and show. And whenever they sell a sealed vintage Pokemon booster box, and I commend them on that. I like that they're trying to innovate. They're trying to do something about this problem that they can't really solve. But I can't wait for a real authority to step up, to open up the booster boxes, take that 1 5-cent plastic Wizards of the Coast wrapping off, put it in a nice PSA box that is like, sealed and authenticated, and put like an authentic, or maybe you don't have to grade the whole box, but just like it's real or whatever, and then make it so it's displayable still, nice and tight, so it can't be open, so you can't crack it open with a crowbar or something. And it would be nice to see that offering, because there is so much of that like sealed collector hesitancy these days with the reseals. And it would be interesting to like... Is
there a financial guarantee though? There's no financial guarantee. Whoever's opening that, not going to guarantee it.
You and I both know financial guarantees are bullshit anyway with PSA. Even though they offer it, they don't actually uphold it most of the time. So like the fact of the financial guarantee, can we just take that off the table? Because it's just kind of like
And why pay somebody to verify something if it still ends up being fake?
Dude, we've been asking, why pay someone to verify a card that you like anyway? Why do you have to have someone else put a number on a card that you already like anyway? I've been sitting here banging my head against the desk for 2 hours trying to figure that out. Like, grading is ridiculous to me. I don't know, but that's just a whole nother thing. And like I said, I'm not trying to gatekeep people like that, because me saying that is actually me doing something that I hate. It's gatekeeping the way that people collect. And I don't think I want to do that, because if you love slabs, that's awesome. It just is irrational to me. That's all. That's just all.
Yeah. What did you just say? Power Keepers is a box you have?
Power Keepers and a first edition Fossil. The Power
Here,
Keepers
hold on
I
one
intend
second.
on
You
probably keeping.
just keep talking.
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
right back.
The Power Keepers I intend on keeping in my personal collection. The first edition Fossil I bought at the height of the Logan Paul with the intentions of ripping it and selling it back to the market and making money. But the market tended to go the other way and breaks started really doing worse. And so I never had the balls or really the cojones to do it. And so I'm sitting here with the Fossil first edition booster box, which honestly, it's not the worst thing to have, but at the same time, I would much rather have an extra EX box than an extra Wizards of the Coast box, because anyone who knows me, you know, I'm not a big fan of like Wizards of the Coast era stuff.
All right. So Josh, right here, I got a Power Keepers pack, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say I take this, I resale this pack and resale it with 35 others, put it in a booster box, and then send it away for that authenticity service. So like this is sealed.
Mm-hmm.
I send it away to that authenticity service. They open the booster box. They look inside. There's 36 of these Power Keepers packs inside. They feel the crimps. They feel good. Fucking Sword and Shield base or whatever is in these packs.
Right.
No like financial guarantee for what they say, right? Now, the person who gets burned the most is the guy who cracks that opens, and then everybody raises their hand at that point, and no one will touch it, right? Like
we saw this happen with Logan Paul and BB or B, you know, with the whole.
How has that worked out?
He's still not paid back. He still hasn't got. Yeah, Jacob's still at large.
Because Shine paid him back because he had the money.
And there was no financial guarantee with the wrapping. So that's exactly how it plays out. We've seen this in the worst case scenario. So what's the point of any of it without it? Yeah, I agree with that, man. I totally agree.
That's why I would hate for somebody to do that. Like, honestly, and I mean this, if you really want that box authenticated and you don't care if you open it, just like open it and authenticate it yourself.
Right. If the intention is truly not to resell, then that is exactly what one
put your name behind the box. Now, this is the thing. Everyone's name doesn't carry weight, you know?
Right.
Like
someone like TCA.
I don't think your name or my name carries weight.
No,
either,
my name would devalue it. Honestly, my name, if I put it on there, it would devalue it for sure.
But it's like you open it up, at least you can verify, and then you sell the box for what it is. 36 packs. Missing a half a cent piece of saran wrap on it.
Yeah, and so what I actually have thought about doing is I would probably, if I ever wanted to, I would open that up. I would weigh out the 12 heavy packs and I'd open those up and I'd get my potential gold star and EX, and then I'd grade the lights, and you know, that's what I do, even because I believe pack grading is even more of a scam and more of a farce. But I do believe that currently people still overvalue those packs, so that's probably the way to go with that type of thing. But I'm not going to open it though. I was very fortunate that I bought it from a seller that had really good feedback, other Pokemon products on their, you know, their eBay page. I talked to them for a week as the auction was going, asking them many questions about where they got it and all these 20 questions sort of thing. And they didn't give any sus answers. So I felt pretty good about my purchase of it. And I'm pretty confident my Power Keepers box is pretty good. So I don't need in my particular, like for my own sanity, to open that one. Now my Fossil box, I would want to open that. I'd probably want to open that, to be honest, because I did buy it from someone with good feedback, but they didn't have other Pokemon product on their page. And I didn't give them the 20 questions. I just asked them where it came from, and they just kind of gave me a general answer response. And, you know, that was something I intended on opening. So it wasn't as much of an issue for me. I was like, oh, I'm going to open this anyway. So who cares, you know, whatever. And they weren't doing the 3-day only at that time for eBay. You could actually open a case if it was resealed or if it was not right. You could actually in longer than 3 days, but that never ended up happening. Now I look at that box sometimes and I lose a couple hours of sleep just looking at it, but that's what everyone does with their sealed product that they bought, you know, in the boom or whatever. And if you don't, then you probably shouldn't have spent the money on the sealed product. I mean, it's not that you should be a little uncomfortable with sealed product from that era unless you pulled it out of the case yourself. And unless you got it from a rep, there's always a chance. Like anyone who says, oh no, there's no chance, they're trying to sell you that product at a much higher price than what they would typically. So just don't believe it. So that's why I want a company to kind of take that responsibility. But the more we talk about it, the more I realize it's probably a really tough, it's a tough hill to climb up.
Yeah, I think it's a tough hill because I think there would just be so many people that would challenge it. Like,
right, and
we're
just talking about
they got would be
the bad people, right? The people trying to scam, right?
Yep.
And I think people would.
And if you were able to get it through, let's say you got a box through, the second you could get a box through, it's just you're just gonna start dumping stuff there, and especially if the market's paying a premium to that stuff, you're gonna sell a box that has no value, resale it, get it authenticated, and then have this crazy premium over something that is fake. Scary.
I mean, and we see that kind of happening right now with like the authenticity guarantee program with eBay. So like that makes sales final. What happens if like you send a card, to get authenticated through eBay? It's a counterfeit card. So say I'm a really bad person, right? And say I want to put myself in this. Say I'm a terrible person and I want to try to scam someone using the eBay authenticity guarantee, and I want to try to get it over. I want to sell an inauthentic product to someone, but make it so they can't return it. Okay. What I would try to do probably as a scammer is I try to send it through the authenticity guarantee program so that it got through. And then it would essentially, and then so if it didn't get through, I would be like, oh, I didn't know. Oh, whatever. It's fake. Whatever. My bad. I had no idea. I bought this from some other guy. But if it did get through, I'd be like, no, that was real when I sent it. You guys you said it was authentic. And then you sold it. That's not my problem. That's your problem.
Exactly.
So
because you're protected now as a seller. Because
big issues on both sides. So like having an authenticity guarantee is really, really problematic in some regards for like people who want to do scamming. It's good in some regards because it prevents scamming because you got some expert, but that always comes back. Who's the expert here? Who's the expert? If the experts can't catch it, who's really, then do we have to like go to YouTube and find the SM Pratt, the Rusty, and then we have to like go and make a YouTube video about it, make it blow up on social media, and like then we have to get Rattle to make a video about it and have this long, in-depth 12-episode series where he like breaks down all the scammers and everything. But where is that authenticity? Where does the madness end, PK? Where does it end?
I mean,
there's no end.
There's a lot of fake first edition stamps floating around right now,
It's like, amazing that people like first edition so much. That little one.
Radar showed on his channel, he had not a whole binder, but he had like a binder page full of fake first edition stamps that he bought from that guy he didn't know at the time. And Radar is somebody who has like a ton of experience in this hobby.
I would trust Radar, and it got by him, right?
And it got by him, and it got by graders too.
And so what if Radar sold one of those to someone else and he thought it was real, and that person thought the Radar was scamming him, and so he called him out or whatever, and Radar was like, look, man, I thought that was real. I don't know. And so then he'd say he sold a really expensive card. Radar's maybe in a situation where he can't really refund it because it's like, I thought that was real. I've already moved on. And like it got authenticated, or maybe it didn't get authenticated. Like, is Radar like in the wrong there? I mean, obviously he needs a refund because he's the seller. It's his responsibility. You take responsibility as a seller.
What if there's two buyers down the line?
Yeah. And so
what if Radar sells
is it on that last buyer's responsibility? Is it their responsibility to refund? And then,
and then why does it go on Radar? And why isn't the guy that Radar bought it from? Well, we can't get a hold of the guy Radar got it from, but you could only get a hold of the last most public figure of those sales, So now all the shit falls downhill to the one guy who probably had who got scammed himself, but he ends up taking all the blame. It's tough.
And all this stuff, to be honest, we talk about it like it happens all the time. It does happen all the time, but it really doesn't happen as often as you might think. I feel like there's
10,000. It could be 10,000 to one, but the whole thing is, don't be the one.
You don't want to be the one bad apple spoils the bunch. But I do feel like that there is, taking a step back, I feel like there's more good in the Pokemon hobby, even though there are those bad actors. There are those scammers, the card kahunas and whatever, but there are people for the most part who love this hobby, though. We're just trying to kind of get by and make a living and do the best by their buyers and sellers. And sometimes things happen on both sides, right? And so, yeah, I would say that it's in this hobby, I think we're still very young. And I think that a lot of emotional responses get brought up to things sometimes, but it always makes sense just to kind of talk it out and have these long form talks on things like it. And, you know, that's why I love podcasts. So,
Yeah. With that said, we've been going for 2 hours, 17 minutes.
yeah, I've
I
got some
opened it up to the
chimichurri and
chat for any
steak that I need to
questions.
throw on the grill, but let's get some questions in.
I opened it up. There were no questions. So,
Oh, nice. Well, if anyone has any questions now, speak now or forever hold your peace. I think the bot wants us to find some love or something. We are not single. So like, I don't know what this bot's trying to barking up the wrong tree. Because I know you got a little one, you know.
yeah, how do these bots, they're blocked from my channel, yet somehow they keep squeaking through. So I have no clue.
They're sneaky. They're sneaky little buggers.
Yeah. But everybody out there, do me a favor. Right before we sign off, if one of the mods could drop a link for the Old Card Shop's YouTube channel, I'd really appreciate that.
And
Everybody
if anyone
watching
here loved this, please go check out our podcast, Cardboard Hands, with Retrospects and Flex Gods. Sorry, Flex. We've been doing it for 10 episodes now. We go every 2 weeks. It's not nearly as exciting as, you know, the celebrity death match that is the Cool Trainer Ryan, Pokey Rev, and you know, a PK. But it's pretty good watch. You know, if you like my takes, you may enjoy it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a fun watch. And anybody who's watching this video after the fact, there'll also be a link down in the description of this video as soon as the video's over of his YouTube channel. Recommend you guys all giving him a subscribe. And then also do me a favor before you guys all leave. Smash that like button. What's going on?
Oh, yeah. Get that like button there. What are we at? We have like 84 people and 50 likes. We can do a little better than that. Come on, guys. Thank you.
Hit that like button. But
We've been trying. We wanted to bring some heat tonight. You know, I love having conversations. I honestly think, you know, PK, you're one of my favorite people in the hobby to talk to because I think your takes are really nuanced, and I always like to hear your opinion on these things. And I think we don't see eye to eye on everything, which sometimes makes really good content. So,
I wouldn't bring you, Josh. I wouldn't have brought you on if we saw eye to eye on everything, and that's one of the reasons I like to reach out to you and have conversations with you.
Yeah.
So,
likewise.
I mean,
well, thanks everyone.
You do have that whatnot hat on, and you know we still kept it going for 2 hours and 19 minutes. That says a lot. So
yeah,
no, but appreciate you, man. Appreciate everything you're doing for the hobby. Appreciate you just being a good guy. For everybody else out there watching in YouTube land, I know I could say this for both me and the Old Card Shop. We appreciate every single one of you guys too for watching, for liking, for subscribing, for everything you do. But other than that, guys, we'll catch you on the next video.